Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to an earlier edition of the Goldie Show. I've been meaning to watch the entire committee hearing that happened today with Secretary Marco Rubio. And instead of watching it on my own, I figured I would do a live stream commentary so that we can watch it together. And we can also analyze a little bit more in depth what Marco Rubio is saying about Iran and, of course, the conflict. So get yourself a drink or whatever you like. I'm drinking a apple flavored bubbly, and let's just dive right in, and I'll give sort of my political commentary and analysis, and I'm also looking forward to what you guys have to say and what you think. So without further ado, let's go, because as a former politician, this stuff is like my bread and butter. I love watching this stuff. I'm like a political nerd when it comes to these sorts of things. So, and let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from. I'm always curious to know where people are watching from all around the world. And hello to all of you. Okay, let's get started. Yeah, if you want us to be right here, actually, yeah, we can just kind of right here. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Earlier protest. All right. The United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee will come to order. It wasn't orderly to begin with, but it's orderly now, thanks to our good crew. And we welcome here, as always, our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, a distinguished alumni of this committee, and I know he's always glad to come back here and visit with us. Marco, we haven't had this kind of excitement since you've been here last time. I know you think this is the way it is every time, but it's not. So in any event, we're glad to have you. For the information of the committee, the Secretary has 4 hearings in these 2 days. So we have negotiated a hard stop at 12:30. To that end, we'll use the usual array of the way we do things here, and that is first of all, I will make an opening statement, and then I'll yield to Senator Shaheen, and then we'll turn the floor over to Senator Rubio. Then we'll do a 5-minute round of questions based on arrival time. So with that, Secretary, it's good to see you here again. Though you're not on the Hill often, a lot has changed, obviously, since the last time you testified on the President's International Affairs budget last year. The department has undergone a major reorganization, making it operate more efficiently and more in line with America's interests, as we discussed before you even took the job. And that's been being executed, I think, quite well. At long last, foreign governments are being encouraged and, when necessary, pushed to live up to their responsibilities to respond to the needs of their own citizens. America will stand up by our allies and provide life-saving assistance to people in their hour of need, but we are not the world's ATM. And so the department is testing new ways of providing strategic assistance and breaking the cycle of dependence on aid. Renewed emphasis on trade over aid will help the American people and lift up countries around the world. This is American generosity and ingenuity in action. Through this budget, the administration is holding UN organizations to account, badly overdue, and alongside Ambassador Waltz, making sure American values are leading in international organizations. You've made securing the Western Hemisphere a top policy and budget priority and have successfully reduced illegal immigration at the southern border to the lowest level in half a century. That has not gone unnoticed. You've helped curb the trafficking of illegal fentanyl into the United States, saving countless lives. The budget prioritizes countering China's unfair trade practices, expanding military and malign influence operations around the world, and which pose some of the greatest threats in modern history to the American people. At the same time, you've been working to ensure these efforts are strategic, targeted, and effective, and we appreciate that. The administration has also taken care to ensure taxpayer dollars don't go to those who are able but unwilling to pay for their own defense. Through concerted effort by you and your colleagues, our NATO allies have increased their defense spending and have committed to reach the 5% by 2035. This is a major change from the way you and I used to deal with this for the decade or more before this. Together, we need to create a next generation NATO that is stronger, more interoperable, and takes advantage of the industrial potential of American and European economies. We also must continue to coordinate with our European partners as they take greater responsibility for supporting Ukraine and work with our partners to deny Russia strategic gains. The administration has prioritized efforts to end conflicts in Africa, which undermine decades of investment in economic growth and global health security. All is not well there. The latest Ebola outbreak in Eastern Congo, now affecting the entire region, highlights how conflict and humanitarian crises abroad threaten the health and security of the American people here at home. I know the department is working hard to protect us from this threat, and I look forward to hearing how the budget supports these efforts. And of course, the administration has taken decisive action to protect American citizens from the threat posed by Iranian nuclear capabilities and ambitions. On behalf of the American people, thank you for your hard work on that. You and I have been through this before, and we know how difficult it is. Change is hard, but it is also necessary. Your efforts to make the State Department more responsive to the needs of Americans will help us all meet the challenges of the 21st century. I look forward to discussing how the budget will further those efforts. With that, I will turn it over to the distinguished ranking member, Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Secretary Rubio. Mr. Secretary, you were a senator. You sat on this committee. You sat on the Intelligence Committee. You know as well as anyone that effective American foreign policy requires a strong partnership with Congress. Allies need to know that our commitments can stand the test of time, and that only happens if Congress is brought into the discussion. Congress cannot be a partner if it's kept in the dark. I have a long list of unanswered requests sitting on your department's desk. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask that these letters be submitted for the record.
They'll be submitted.
Yeah, okay. Just because you ask a question doesn't mean that you deserve an answer, especially if your question is stupid. So I'm just putting it out there. But here we go.
I've requested a briefing on changes to U.S. force posture in Europe. And after 33 days, we still have no response. We've requested a briefing from the Iran war on displacement. After 90 days, we still have no response. We've asked for a briefing on Ukraine on a number of issues. After 180 days, we still have no response. We've asked for a briefing on lifting Milorad Dodik's sanctions. And after 225 days, we still have no response. We've asked for a briefing for the U.S. Agency for Global Media. No response after 344 days. The Romanian visa program termination. We've followed up 5 times over 435 days, and we've still gotten no response. In January, when you were before this committee, I asked if you would report to this committee once an audit system was in place to track Venezuelan oil revenues. You said, and I quote, "Oh, absolutely, yeah, we are still waiting." And when you do notify Congress, it's to inform us of decisions you have already made. That is not consultation, as you well know. That is not advice and consent. Congress has been clear on a bipartisan basis. We do not want to cede ground to China. Yet this administration is closing consulates and cutting funding in the Indo-Pacific. The same pattern extends to global health. USAID supported Ebola detection and prevention activities in DRC and Uganda for years. And we can see in this poster, even Elon Musk admitted that one of the things we accidentally canceled, very briefly, was Ebola prevention. Well, those programs were dismantled. And today we have to screen for Ebola at Dulles Airport rather than in the DRC and Uganda, more than 7,000 miles away. You're asking for a 44% reduction in the State Department budget. That includes eliminating funding to the World Health Organization. It includes eliminating all disease-specific funds.
Yeah, USAID was like the biggest scam. USAID was basically just a slush fund for communists and terrorists and NGOs.
In the middle of an Ebola crisis that's affecting Americans. Yet, no one from your department can explain to us why this is a good idea. You sent Congress one notification saying you needed $19 billion.
You know something? It's a good idea because President Trump literally ran one of his campaign promises, like in his platform. President Trump literally said that he wants to get rid of the waste and mismanagement in USAID. That was literally part of his platform and part of his campaign. So, you know who thinks it's a good idea? The American people who voted for President Trump based on his platform, which included creating Doge. to get rid of waste and mismanagement. So who are you to question the American people's choice? It's a good idea, and the American people voted on it instead and agreed that it's a good idea. That's one of the reasons why President Trump got elected in the first place. Literally, he got elected on that mandate.
To close out USAID. Then you sent another saying you needed some of that money to respond to disease outbreaks. Congress has asked for an explanation, and we still have not received one. The same pattern extends to our alliances. I just returned from a bipartisan delegation to the Arctic. We are on the verge of losing the very alliances that we have built for decades because the president manufactured a crisis over Greenland. And nowhere is that clearer than with Russia. In 2017, you wrote as a senator that Vladimir Putin will never be a trusted ally or a reliable, constructive partner. But since taking office, you, the president, the vice president, Steve Witkoff, not one of you has been to Ukraine. And yet your envoys talk to Putin on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's called diplomacy. Just because you don't think someone is reliable or beneficial or useful, it doesn't mean you don't talk to them. You still have to talk to them. That's literally part of your job, right? Like, what an insane comment. What an absolutely insane comment that she's making right now. President Trump went to China. Does that mean he's buddy-buddy with Beijing? Absolutely not. He's even said so. He said he doesn't trust them. Like, this is how politics works. You're supposed to speak with everyone and engage in diplomacy. Like, communication, like communicating with someone doesn't mean that you're endorsing them. Like, how low IQ are you? I mean, this is like, obviously, like, this narrative, like, whatever, it's basically, it's very, very like partisan and very biased, right?
The president has invited him, given him the red carpet treatment on American soil, but yet you won't come up here and brief Congress on any of it. And decisions Congress has made on Russia have been systematically undermined.
Why should Marco Rubio answer for the president? He's there to answer for his department.
Congress passed support for Ukraine. The administration has slow-walked it. And instead of sanctioning Russia, the administration issued oil licenses that have sent billions to Moscow. Congress has asked what this approach has produced. Russia has conducted 5 times more drone strikes on Ukraine since 2024. More U.S. businesses are being directly targeted than at any point in this conflict. And Russia is providing targeting intelligence to help Iran hit our facilities and personnel in the Middle East, while we're helping them fund this war. When I talk to my constituents, they ask for economic relief at home, not regime change in Havana or Caracas or Tehran. Instead, you sent Congress a war powers notification saying we are not in active hostilities with Iran, while the U.S. was conducting strikes against Iran and Iran was bombing U.S. embassies and bases throughout the Middle East. That was not consultation. It was an attempt to avoid answering to this committee and this Congress about this war. Congress has asked basic questions about the war. Why are roughly half of our Patriot interceptor stockpiles gone? Why does the Strait of Hormuz remain closed? Why is gas up $1.50? Why did 13 American service members lose their lives in this war? Congress deserves to know why, and Americans deserve to know why. Mr. Secretary, you would not have stood for this kind of stonewalling by the administration when you were a senator, and you certainly shouldn't stand for it as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. We'll now proceed to a round of 5-minute questions. I'm sorry. We'll try. Did you want to do, we talked about that.
Do you want one?
We actually talked about that, but he thought that questioning might be easier. Why don't you go ahead?
I have it in writing. You want me to read it?
Give us your best shot.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here. There'll be a lot to talk about today. And I just want to remind everybody, you know, our foreign policy is one that's solely focused on the national interest of the United States of America, on the defense of our country, both its military defense and our security, but also our economic security and the vibrancy of our economy, our sovereignty, and our future. We believe that America should lead the world, and I believe that we are, and we'll have a very good story to tell about that. American leadership, however, should always be on behalf of the American interests. I say this because I think over a period of time in our foreign policy, we lost focus on that. The reality of it is that our foreign policy, first and foremost, must always be what is in the national interest of the United States of America. And determining the national interest oftentimes requires us to make pragmatic decisions. Sometimes in foreign policy, the choices are not between a good choice and a bad choice. It's between two less than ideal choices, and you're trying to figure out which one of these two choices is the one that is best for the United States and least harmful to our interests. And that plays out every single day. That said, we remain the world's sole global superpower, the most powerful country on earth. We have the largest economy. We have the most formidable and powerful military ever known to man, by the way. Our dollar remains the reserve currency of the world. Our language is used extensively throughout the world to transact all sorts of business and many of our engagements. But all of this means very little if that power is not used to protect the people who built it, the people who it is meant to protect. I also remind everybody the United States government is not a charity. We are not here to play social worker. We are here to win. We are here to win on behalf of the American people and on behalf of the national interest, to win for our country, to win for the people of America, to win for the things that are important for our future. And that's what we exist to do. The State Department exists to carry out the foreign policy of the United States, both in diplomacy and in aid, in a way that furthers the national interest and helps the American people. And it's guided every decision that's been made since January of 2025. I'll give you a perfect example in our own Western Hemisphere, an area that this committee and many of its members long argued, as I did, has long been neglected and not been paid attention to. We now have in this hemisphere a coalition of friendly countries, over a dozen, who have aligned to work on not just the issues of security that we all have in common, but also economic prosperity that go hand in hand. It's an amazing story that basically, other than Nicaragua, other than Cuba, obviously other than Venezuela, remains with some challenges, and of course Brazil, although they're in the midst of an election cycle, and to some extent the current government in Colombia as well, at least the president's been problematic. But generally speaking, it is now a region filled with American allies, American-friendly leaders, and an America-friendly direction. Now, obviously, we have to operationalize that into action after 20 years of neglect, in which China and other global powers have intruded in our Western Hemisphere to the detriment not just of American national interest, but to the detriment, in our view, of the people of those countries as well. So these are important achievements, and one that I'm very happy about. I'm also happy about the way we've transformed foreign aid. In any transition, there will be, bumps in the road, but largely speaking, if you think about how those programs that existed in the past were failing us, the old model had to be replaced. And the foreign assistance that remains is being brought under the strategic direction of the State Department. So we're not just providing money, we are also seeking outcomes. It's not just how much money you spend on a program, it's whether you're getting outcomes from it, but it's also being guided through with our strategic view in mind. And that means that we are able to provide aid, not just all over the world, but specifically targeted at those most in need and those places around the world most important to the national interest of the United States. That will remain our guiding principle. That's been our guiding principle in our reforms. So, we can get into a lot of these details in our questions. The bottom line is that all this and more is a reflection of this belief that I outlined at the outset, and that is that foreign policy cannot be separated from economic policy, from border policy, from energy policy, from any of these other spheres that are critical to our national interests. A country that cannot build ships or produce medicine or control immigration or access vital resources cannot defend its people, cannot defend its interests, and cannot defend its way of life. So our foreign policy continues to be reoriented around the real foundations of national strength. This budget is yet another step, I believe, in that direction. Obviously, the appropriators here will have a huge say on the outcome of what that budget ultimately looks like, as we don't anticipate that for the first time in modern history, Congress will just take up our budget and pass it. We think it'll go through some substantial reforms along the way, and we look forward to engaging you like we did last year to produce what we think is a very good spending bill at that time. So anyways, I look forward to your questions. At least that's what it says here. I'm not sure if I really look forward to your questions. I look forward to probably half your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio. We will now do a round of questions, 5-minute questions based on order of attendance. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to say thank you for the work you've done with respect to Iran. We all of us that have worked on this for years know how frustrating that is, how difficult it is to work with this regime who've sponsored terrorism, kidnapping, and killed thousands of Americans for the last 47 years. Thank you for doing something about it. I know you and the president are doing all you can to ensure this comes to a
All right,
close
here we
sooner
go.
rather than later. I wonder if you could give us at least a brief update on where we are.
Well, first, let me remind everybody that while I've not been before this committee since, I believe, February, when we briefed on the Venezuela operation, I have appeared on multiple occasions here, both in my role as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, in both all Senate briefings multiple times, Gang of 8 briefings, Gang of 16 briefings. So we've talked about this topic with some of you in those settings in the past that you've heard from us. Let me just lay the predicate here, okay? Iran's desire to build a nuclear weapon was going to be effectuated behind a conventional shield. They were going to build for themselves so many missiles, so many drones, so many conventional weapons, including a navy, that at that
Guys, so he's not wrong. I mean, the Islamic regime literally built underground missile cities. Okay, so let me pull it up. So this is one of the things that always frustrates me. You have these like stupid people who know nothing about Iran, and they go around and they say things like, oh, the economic sanctions are hurting the Iranian people. The economic sanctions are why the Iranian people are poor. So, if you want the Iranian people to be happy, lift the economic sanctions. No, the economic sanctions are not against the Iranian people. The economic sanctions are against the Islamic regime. But here's the thing. If the economic sanctions were actually, let's say, really having a negative impact on the Iranian people, why is it that for the last 20, 30 years, the Islamic regime has spent billions, if not trillions, not just building secret underground nuclear facilities, but they've also built secret underground missile cities. What you've seen in like Gaza is nothing compared to what we have recently uncovered in occupied Iran. And here's the thing, for the longest time, right, especially in the last 20 or so years, the Islamic regime would randomly arrest hikers and environmentalists and scientists and biologists, people who would go out into nature to, study Iranian wildlife or, whatever, like do some hiking or whatever the case might be, even like off-roading ATV type stuff. The Islamic regime would arrest these people and put them in Evin prison. Evin prison is the political prison. And for the longest time, we didn't know why. All we knew is that, the Islamic regime also hates environmentalists and, hikers and whatever the case might be. It's only recently we found out why they've been arresting all these people and putting them in political prison. It's because more likely than not, these people, while they were out, in the field doing like research or, whatever the case might be, they would accidentally stumble across the secret entrances to one of the, underground weapons or missile facilities or whatever the case might be. And in order to keep that information hidden from everyone else, the Islamic regime would just take that environmental activist or, the hiker or whatever, and just throw them in jail arbitrarily and just, pin some random crime on them, like spying for Mossad or, waging war against Allah or whatever, right? So it's only when these underground facilities were discovered that we finally put 2 and 2 together and realized why Iranians who go out hiking in nature are put in jail. Let me find it for you. Because they were speaking about this. Or was that? I'm gonna find a good video of this. So I want to find a good one for you. And you're not really going to find this in mainstream media, but I think it's this one. Yeah. Okay. Let's just go with this one for now. Okay, look at this. So this is footage of the underground missile facility, right? So when Secretary Rubio is talking about Iran, first of all, he means the Islamic regime. But when he says, the Islamic regime was looking to build all these missiles and nuclear bombs and things like that, he's not exaggerating, because 70% of the Iranian people live below the poverty line because the Islamic regime takes all the money, right? Guys, Iran is not a poor country. Iran is an incredibly rich country. Iran, at the very minimum, makes $500 million a day just on oil sales, okay? That's part of the reason why the Islamic regime is literally going scorched earth and is murdering Iranians every single day, and murdered over 40,000 innocent Iranians on January 8 and 9. They did that because they don't want to leave, because it's a cash cow for them, right? They oppress the Iranian people because they use Iran as an ATM to fuel and fund their never-ending jihad, their terrorism, right? Watch this. This is insane. So think about it. If the economic sanctions are really the reason why the Iranian people are poor, then how the hell is the Islamic regime able to spend billions, if not trillions of dollars to build these underground missile cities? Look at this. There's no audio here. Let's see. This one doesn't have audio. Let's see if I can find one with audio. All right, let's try this one.
All right, we have some more breaking news coming in. Iran has released a dramatic video through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The video shows what Tehran claims is a vast underground missile arsenal. Tehran signals its continued military strength despite heavy bombardment. These are the images of missiles, mobile launchers, and rocket systems. The video also makes bold claims of targeting an F-35 Lightning II, mocking US military superiority. As the war enters a critical phase, Iran reiterates that its missile program, featuring systems like Imad missile, Sejil missile, and Khorramshahr missile, remains a central pillar of its defense strategy.
So there's some footage for you. I'll try to find more. You know what? I should probably do a whole video where I talk about the underground missile cities, because it's insane. It's literally insane. Guys, they even built subways. Like the missile cities are so huge that the Islamic regime has built full-on underground subways, okay, to transport everything around. And these underground cities and tunnels are only accessible by the Islamic regime. So, okay, so there is just a little sneak peek into the underground missile cities. So now going back to Secretary Rubio, right? When he's talking about how the Islamic regime is building all of this stuff, he's not exaggerating, because we've already seen the proof.
So we've talked about this topic with some of you in those settings in the past, or you've heard from us. Let me just lay the predicate here, okay? Iran's desire to build a nuclear weapon was going to be built, was going to be effectuated behind a conventional shield. They were going to build for themselves so many missiles, so many drones, so many conventional weapons, including a navy, that at that point, there's nothing you could do about it. What they tried to do is they were going to try to build a conventional shield and hide behind that conventional shield and basically say to the world, if you come and do anything about our nuclear program, we will overwhelm you with missiles, we will overwhelm you with drones, and we will overwhelm you with our Navy, and you will not win. You will not be able to do anything about it. They were seeking that point of immunity, which is why the president chose to act, to deny them that point of immunity. Operation Epic Fury, some of you didn't like it, some of you did, was highly successful in achieving its military objectives, which is dramatically reducing the defense industrial base of Iran, the ability to build these missiles and to build these drones, especially the missiles program, substantially degraded. A substantial percentage, and I'll leave the exact numbers to the Department of War because I'm not a general and I'm not here to speak as a military planner, but a substantial degradation in the number of launchers that they have as well. They still have a lot of drones because these are easy to make. We all know it's not an Iran challenge. This is a global challenge. And it's playing out every single day around the world. I mean, Mexican cartels are using UAVs against each other. We should imagine at some point may even use it against our interests. So this is a pervasive problem around the world. The economics of it are something we have to solve for. But nonetheless, even their drone building capability has been eroded. Today, there is no Iranian Navy. There is no such thing. There's a bunch of Boston whalers with machine guns on them, but there is no Navy. There is no Iranian Navy. It lies at the bottom of the ocean and will soon, within a number of years, be prime fishing spots because they'll turn into reefs. So my whole point is that the Iranian conventional shield has been substantially eroded. Now, in the aftermath of that, two things have happened. The first is they entered into a ceasefire. They agreed, we agreed to stop. But part of that agreement was that they would reopen the straits. They did not, at which point the president decided, and I think appropriately, we can't have a world in which only Iranian ships get through the straits. And so if they're going to shut down the straits for everybody, we're going to shut down the straits for them. And we have done that through a very effective blockade. And by the way, through the seizure of sanctioned ships in the Indo-Pacific as well. The cost to Iran every single day in lost revenue is in the hundreds of millions of dollars that they are losing in lost revenue that they're not generating as a result of that. Now, we are in talks. And I say talks because talks with Iran are not like talks with Switzerland. Okay? They're very different. They require the use of intermediaries.
Okay, so that's really important, okay? When Marco Rubio is saying, talks with Iran, and then he clarifies, he says they're very different, right? Because people just assume when President Trump or Marco Rubio or someone else says, we're talking with the Islamic regime, people think that means, oh, okay, so you see them as like a legitimate entity. That's not the case, and Secretary Rubio makes that very clear. He's like, talks with the Islamic regime are not the same as talks with Switzerland, right? Like, again, you're not dealing with rational, normal state actors. You're dealing with a brutal Islamic dictatorship that is stuck in the 7th century, and President Trump rightfully calls them lunatics because that's what we've been trying to say. They're literally lunatics, right?
Unfortunately. But there is the prospect before us, which could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, that for the first time, certainly in my memory, they have agreed to negotiate aspects of their nuclear program that just a month ago, just a year ago, they were refusing to even mention, much less enter into discussions about. That is not a guarantee that ultimately it will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate or acceptable to the American people. But we'll be able to engage them in a process to truly test the proposition.
Sorry, let me go to some of the super chats really quick because I think they're on the topics that I've been discussing. So EHEF says, every country has missile stockpiles under the justification of domestic in-country defense, but we're supposed to believe Iran had them for the giggles. Yeah, like that's exactly it, right? Like we're supposed to believe that the Islamic regime, I like to call it the Islamic regime occupying Iran, because, Iran is very different from the Islamic regime. Iran is occupied, kind of like how there's Germany and Nazi Germany. So right now, occupied Iran is basically like Nazi Germany, and the real Iran is, being occupied. So, but the Islamic regime literally spent billions and trillions of dollars building underground missile cities and underground nuclear facilities, right? In mountains to try and keep them hidden. So I agree. And then Heartbreaker says, the key word you need to pay attention to is the word program when Cruz asks Rubio about arming civilians inside of Iran. Okay, absolutely. I will keep an eye out for that. I know we played it earlier today, but I'm interested in hearing the entire conversation as well, because we only listened to like a 20-second clip, and I thought that was, super short. But I will definitely keep that in mind. Thank you. And then we have a new member. Kevin, welcome. Welcome to Goldie's Gang. Okay. Let's continue.
Of how far they're willing to go. Complicating that process, unfortunately, is their internal regime is somewhat fractured in the sense of it takes days to get responses from their system.
Wait, let me go back.
That agreed to negotiate aspects of their nuclear revenue is in the hundreds of millions of dollars that they are losing in lost revenue that they're not generating as a result of that. Now, we are in talks, and I say talks because talks with Iran are not like talks with Switzerland.
Exactly.
Okay? They're very different. They require the use of intermediaries, unfortunately. But there is the prospect before us, which could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, that for the first time, certainly in my memory, they have agreed to negotiate aspects of their nuclear program that just a month ago, just a year ago, they were refusing to even mention, much less enter into discussions about. That is not a guarantee that ultimately it will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate or acceptable to the American people. But we'll be able to engage them in a process to truly test the proposition of how far they're willing to go. Complicating that.
Oh, I just want to go to this comment I saw. So Conrad says, love your content. Hello from Michigan. Hello, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the live stream. And I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat, but because I'm also listening and trying to pay attention to what Senator, I keep on saying Senator, it's terrible. Secretary Rubio is saying. So I'm kind of focusing on that, but I'll try to keep an eye on the comments when I can. But this is, guys, so literally this is just like a watch party, right? Just casual, unscripted. I'm just here providing some commentary, giving some background details, normal. So let me put it this way. Before I started my YouTube channel, I would watch all of these anyway. I would just put it on my TV, sit there and just, watch and analyze and, sometimes get frustrated or whatever the case might be. So instead of doing that right now, instead of laying on my couch and just watching this, instead I'm here watching it in front of my camera. I put on my blazer because, former politician, gotta look the part. But yeah, we're watching it together. So I hope you guys enjoy not just the video itself, but also my commentary and analysis. I'll try not to go on too many tangents.
Was that they would reopen the straits. They did not, at which point the president decided, and I think appropriately, we can't have a world in which only Iranian ships get through the straits.
Yeah.
And so if they're going to shut down the straits for everybody, we're going to shut down the straits for them. And we have done that through a very effective blockade. And by the way, through the seizure of sanctioned ships in the Indo-Pacific as well. The cost to Iran every single day and lost revenue is in the hundreds of millions of dollars that they are losing in lost revenue that they're not generating as a result of that. Now, we are in talks. And I say talks because talks with Iran are not like talks with Switzerland. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're very different. They require the use of intermediaries, unfortunately. But there is the prospect before us, which could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, that for the first time, certainly in my memory, they have agreed to negotiate aspects of their nuclear program that just a month ago, just a year ago, they were refusing to even mention, much less enter into discussions about. That is not a guarantee that ultimately it will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate or acceptable to the American people. but we'll be able to engage them in a process to truly test the proposition of how far they're willing to go. Complicating that process, unfortunately, is their internal regime is somewhat fractured in the sense of it takes days to get responses from their system. We can go into more depth.
Guys, the Islamic regime is more than just somewhat fractured. It is literally fractured. It's full on Game of Durka, which is what I call it, kind of like Game of Thrones, but with terrorists. So Game of Durka. So again, let me just pull up my Boom Boom Bingo sheet, because we're probably going to refer to that quite a bit. So, when you look at the Boom Boom Bingo sheet, the divisions, it's more than somewhat fractured, guys. First of all, we don't even know if Mojtaba is alive, okay? If he's alive, we don't know if he's, in a coma or not. Pete Hegseth, President Trump, and Marco Rubio have all confirmed that he is injured. They've hinted at sort of the extent of his injuries, but we don't know. He could be possibly missing a leg, an arm, maybe half his face. We literally don't know. But so right now, the current supreme dictator, nowhere to be found, no sign of life or proof of life, right? Also, I want to point this out because this is big. The former supreme dictator, his evil demonic dad, Ali Khamenei, who we called Mushtaba, Mush means rat, and he was hiding like a rat in bunkers. He was boom-boomed on February 28th. He still has not been buried. They still have not held a funeral ceremony for the supreme dictator. You would think that if the Islamic regime is so strong and that, according to fake stream media and according to the Democrats and according to, supporters of the Islamic regime or communist or Antifa or, whatever, you would think that if they're saying that, oh, the Islamic regime has never been stronger than ever, okay, genius, why haven't they buried Khamenei yet? Why is his corpse rotting away in a fridge somewhere? You would think if the Islamic regime is so strong, they would have buried him, because according to their own religion, right, they're supposed to bury someone within 3 days. February 28th, he was exterminated like the garbage that he was. Right now, it's the 2nd of June. I don't know about you, but that's a little bit more than 3 days, right? A little bit more than 3 days. So that's another thing to factor in. The Islamic regime still hasn't buried Khamenei, right? No one's talking about that. Now let's get into the internal divisions. So of course there's Ghalibaf, okay? And so he's one versus Vahidi, the guy with the skid mark on his forehead, the crazy guy. And then there's the Jalili, and then there's like some other Durkas as well. Now, this is a new character. I mean, new character in like the more recent events here. So Javad Zarif, he right now is being accused by the supporters of the Islamic regime of being like a spy, a Zionist spy for the United States and Israel. And there was like that footage of him. Let me see if I can find the footage of, let's see. Yeah, here we go. Look at this. So the guys, the game of Durka is strong right now. So this cardboard image here, that's this guy, okay? That's Javad Zarif. He's a former foreign minister, and he used to be like very important, maybe still is, I don't know, within the Islamic regime structure. Wait, I'm getting some weird trolls. Let me ban them. All right. Okay. So he, is pretty relevant, but now the Islamic regime supporters are accusing this guy of being a secret Zionist / American spy. Okay? So he's down here, right? He's former officials, influential figures. So this is how bad the cracks are within the Islamic regime itself, right? So all these various factions, and now some people are literally taking, like, they made this like cardboard cutout of Javad Zarif, and they're like, oh, la, 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 and they're burning it, right? And then they basically have, like, I think the flag of Israel on one side, and then the flag of the United States on the other side. So just watch this. This is like new footage. Oh, the quality's not the greatest. Let me see if I can find a better version. Let me see if I can find it. That might be better version. Okay. No, the quality's all pretty low. All right. Okay, we'll just go with the first one. So this is as good as the quality is going to get. All right. So I don't know if you there. So you can see that's the flag of Israel on one side. That's the flag of America on the other side. So they're basically, right? These are supporters of the Islamic regime. This is how bad the internal infighting and the internal fractures are getting. Guys, we've never seen anything like this, right? So in the 47 years that the Islamic regime has occupied Iran, there's always been rumors and hints of like dissatisfaction, mostly behind the scenes. People have kept it quiet. We've never openly seen outward displays of one group of supporters of the Islamic regime attacking another group of supporters of the Islamic regime and burning their effigies and openly accusing them of being like, a Mossad or CIA or, whatever, right? So don't discount this. Like, and you won't see this in mainstream media. And if you do see this in mainstream media, you'll probably see it like 2 or 3 weeks from now, right? But this is what's happening in occupied Iran right now. So going back to, and remember, that's this guy here. So on the Boom Boom Bingo sheet, that's this guy right here, Javad Zarif. Okay? So going back now to Marco Rubio, now that you have some context about how fractured it is, Marco Rubio seems to be downplaying it a little bit, right? Because he says, it's somewhat fractured. No, guys, it's not somewhat fractured. It's incredibly fractured. And I believe part of the reason that it is so fractured is because of the current strategy that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu and their administrations, and of course their militaries, are putting on the Islamic regime. So let's go back a little bit now.
Guarantee that ultimately will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate, unfortunately. But there is the prospect before us, which could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, that for the first time, certainly in my memory, they have agreed to negotiate aspects of their nuclear program that just a month ago, or just a year ago, they were refusing to even mention, much less enter into discussions about. That is not a guarantee that ultimately it will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate or acceptable to the American people. But we'll be able to engage them in a process to truly test the proposition of how far they're willing to go.
And here's the interesting thing. Marco Rubio knows full well that you cannot trust the Islamic regime, and they're lying. And the Islamic regime has come out openly, like certain elements within them, and they've said that we're never going to negotiate and the negotiations are cut off. But the reason that there's a fracture is because there are some elements that apparently are negotiating with the United States. And I noticed a lot of you are asking, well, who is negotiating with the United States? We don't know, right? President Trump, Marco Rubio, and others are purposely keeping that vague because that's another way for the United States to add fuel to the fire when it comes to the internal divisions. If I had to guess who's negotiating, I would probably say Ghalibaf is probably secretly negotiating, not because he's a reasonable person. They're all terrorists, right? There are no good Nazis. They're all Muslim Nazis. They're all terrorists, right? But I would say he's probably negotiating because he's a little bit more of a pragmatist, and he just wants to survive. Okay, he wants to survive. Whereas someone like Vahidi is so out there, him and along with the clerics or whatever, they're just like, oh, like kill them all, right? Now the challenge that Ghalibaf has is that he's not in control of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. But here's the thing. He is a former general, okay? So he actually used to, years ago, he held the role that this guy currently has, right? So IRGC commander, Ghalibaf was IRGC commander at some point. So there are still elements within the IRGC that are loyal to Ghalibaf, including this guy, Abdullahi, right? So when you look at the game of Durka, wait, let me do this so I can go like that. So in the game of Durka, I would, if I was going to guess, I would say it's Ghalibaf who's secretly negotiating. I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know, but based on just what I know, that's the most likely person, especially since we're also seeing his name being sort of whispered around in the news media cycles. So there's Ghalibaf. This guy, Abdullahi, is on Ghalibaf's side. So that means there's also fractures within the IRGC command itself because you have Vahidi versus Abdullahi, right? So even within the IRGC, there are elements that are fighting one another, okay? So just keep that in mind.
Complicating that process, unfortunately, this program that just a month ago, just a year ago, they were refusing to even mention, much less enter into discussions about. That is not a guarantee that ultimately it will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate or acceptable to the American people. But we'll be able to engage them in a process to truly test the proposition of how far they're willing to go. Complicating that process, unfortunately, is their internal regime is somewhat fractured in the sense of it takes days to get responses from their system. We can go into more depth in your follow-up questions. But we're hopeful that something like that could happen in which the straits would reopen. We would enter into a period of negotiations on very specific topics, delineated negotiations, in the hope of reaching an outcome that's acceptable to us and something that they would be able to do as well. If it doesn't work out, then obviously we still have a problem with respect to their nuclear ambitions. But what they won't have is the conventional shield to hide behind any longer.
Thank you, Secretary. I'm going to ask one more question. Hopefully this.
Oh, just a quick super chat. Adam says, hey, saw you debating Cenk and like you felted him. I mean, I did beat him, but I mean, that's chunky yogurt for you. Yeah, like I'm glad that you guys appreciated that. The guy's basically an idiot and a loser, and yeah, like his whole shtick, like Chunky Yogurt's whole shtick is just interrupting people and just blaming everything on the Jews, right? Which is just like he's literally like a low IQ grifter. Anyways, he was banned from going to the UK. I thought that was pretty hilarious. And he's even blaming that on Israel. Like he's literally blaming the fact that the United Kingdom banned him from going. By the way, like he has, like no one has the right to enter a country that they're not a citizen of, right? Like, you don't have the right to just show up to any country. Any country, if you're not a citizen of that country, they can refuse you. They can refuse you entry. They don't even have to give you a reason for that, right? I mean, it happens all the time. Like, people want to like cross the border into like another country. If the border guard, just has like an off feeling or, whatever, they can just say no. They can deny entry. Like, you don't have a right to enter a country. The only time you have a right to enter a country is if you're a citizen of that country. Then, of course, then you're going home, right? That's the only time you have a right. But the fact that like he's making this a big deal, like, oh, I was denied entry to the UK. Oh, that must be the fault of Israel. Like, blame the Jews, right? It's just he's literally insane. Like, you cannot negotiate, or sorry, not negotiate. You can't even debate with people like that, right? It's just basically jihadi propaganda. But yeah, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Okay, let's continue.
We'll shorten as we go around. There'll be more questions, obviously, on that topic. But I know you just got back from China not long ago. Could you give us a quick update on the state of U.S.-China relations?
Yeah, look, I mean, China and the United States are the two largest economies in the world, the two most powerful militaries in the world. The Chinese government and the U.S. government have to speak. I mean, it's not a choice here. We have to have some measure of communication, if for nothing else, in order to de-escalate potential points of conflict that could lead to something broader.
Oh, so apparently felted means that I lose. So that person thinks that I lost. Well, I mean, the fact that you're using a word like felted, I think that just shows your IQ anyway. So I don't know. Like, if you think I lost that debate, then that just shows your I don't know. Guys, I don't know these weird terms, okay? Felted, I don't know what that means. Oh, I felled him. Okay. Then yeah, I agree with that. So thank you. Sorry guys. I don't know these words. But look, we learned something new today. All right. I should probably do like a live watch party of like that Piers Morgan show or something at some point.
There are obviously very significant irritants in our relationship with China. Some of these are long-term problems that we know we're going to have to address. And so what we're trying to do is manage a period of strategic stability while recognizing that there are areas of our relationship in which we are going to have struggles, not just for years, but perhaps for decades. We recognize this. But I think as much as anything else, we have to recognize that the United States and China have to be able to have points of dialogue and speak to one another. As I said, for no other reason than to be able to have a communication channel. I think in our meetings, it was abundantly clear which are the areas that we do not have strong alignment or agreement on. We understand that there are areas in which long-term we're going to have some real challenges, whether it's supply chains. Put it to you this way, let's leave China aside for a moment. The United States, and I would argue the world, cannot depend on one country for 90% of anything, especially 90% of things that are critical to our economies, not from our weapon systems to our pharmaceuticals. We just can't live in a world in which we rely on anybody for 90% of what we get in one sole source that could be cut off at any time as leverage against us or punishment or in a time of conflict.
That's exactly what China does, though. Like, that's literally what they do. So guys, in like a previous lifetime, before I became a politician, I was an international trade lawyer. I practiced international trade law for 5 years, dumping, subsidies, imports, exports. That's China's strategy. They will just like, it's called dumping. They'll dump a product into a country at a very, very low price, a price that is lower than the cost of manufacturing. What that does is it makes people buy the cheaper product, and then all of the local domestic producers eventually go out of business. And then once they go out of business, and then the industry, like the local domestic industry in that country dies, China will then immediately jack up the prices on their own products to even like much higher than what the local domestic industry was selling the products at. And a very good example of that is the bicycle industry in Canada.
And so we are actively searching and have plans in place, and we're implementing these to diversify where we get critical minerals, where we get our supply chain, secure that supply chain. And obviously the Chinese would like to retain their monopoly position in some of these. This is going to be a long-term issue that we're going to have to continue to confront.
Critical minerals, guys, one of the biggest untapped areas for critical minerals is Iran, is occupied Iran.
And work on that continues even while we are engaged in the ability to dialogue and speak to them, because we have to. It's responsible, and we truly have no choice but to be able to do that. It's to their benefit and ours, and I would argue to the benefit of the world, that these two countries are able to speak to one another.
Thank you, Secretary. And I think your comments about the supply chain and the critical minerals and everything else that's in the bottleneck, these are things that are relatively new to us. They've always been there, but COVID underscored that. And then, of course, the Ukraine war brought it out even more. And appreciate your remarks. I think everybody at this dais knows we are, as a nation, looking at that. With that, Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary.
Okay, before we go to that, let me just go to the super chat. So PC says, Goldie, I do not want those two in my country. I'd have banned them if I had the power to. Yeah, I agree. I mean, they should just go back to Turkey, and they can be Turkey's problem. And yes, I see all the comments. So I misunderstood the felted thing. So yes, it was a compliment. Thank you. I appreciate that. I learned something new today. So I felted him. Okay. Guys, this is how you can tell, like, I'm not like a gambler, or like I don't really go to, like, I don't really go to casinos or anything like that.
Terry, at this budget hearing last year, you testified that no one had died as a result of foreign aid cuts. Sadly, I think we're seeing in real time that that's not true today. There are more than 1,000 cases, more than 200 Ebola-related deaths. And as we know, one of the entities that is a critical global health tool is GAVE, particularly during a disease outbreak. It plays a role in distributing Ebola vaccines, and it has committed up to $40 million to develop a vaccine for the current Ebola strain.
Okay, so I kind of just want to focus on the parts about Iran. So I'm just going to I'm going to skip through this part until we get to the next part about Iran.
That has no vaccine right now. So how are you making sure that Secretary Kennedy, who's been sitting on those funds for months now, is going to release them so that they can go to help develop a vaccine to address the Ebola outbreak?
Yeah, well, a couple points on GAVE.
Okay. Let me just... Okay.
To it. On this specific item, I would
Stigma on that oil and give an extra windfall desirable. I think through Russia's committee, as soon as
matrix.
we will follow up, and I hope you will share with this committee as soon as you get it resolved. I want to go to Russian oil sanctions and general licenses, because President Trump gave Russia a lifeline, allowing it to sell oil globally through licenses issued by the Treasury Department. While I think the administration should have known that the Iran war would make Russian oil more desirable, they decided to remove the stigma on that oil and give an extra windfall of cash to Putin. So can you let us know whether you believe, or whether you will support extending those licenses, when it comes back up mid-June?
Yeah, a couple points. First of all, the two things have happened. The one is actually the U.S. production and U.S. playing a role in the global energy supply has increased. I think we had our largest amount of exports from the United States we've ever seen. So we've also benefited from this, and our energy dominance has really come into play. The Russian waivers were a decision. These are the policy, the underlying policy remains on the sanctions. What has changed is these time-limited extensions to sort of try to alleviate the global, the problem we're facing too is there's a contagion potential. And that is that at some point we can do strategic reserves. We can do some of the other things that we've done to sort of alleviate global supply. But at some point you have to ensure, this is not so much for us. At the end of the day, our economy is not in need of it, but there are other economies around the world that have benefited from this. So these are time-limited extensions that ultimately at some point will expire.
We've certainly benefited China
Why
and
interrupt
Russia's
him?
economy.
Well,
Or-
China doesn't, I mean, China refines oil. They import a lot, but they refine oil. And
But they also benefit from Russian oil. But my question for you is, can you commit not to extend the general license again when it expires on June 17th?
Well, that ultimately is a decision that's made by Treasury, but I will tell you, it depends on the circumstances at the time. We would like to end it as soon as we possibly can because the underlying policy of this country has been to sanction their oil. These are time-limited waivers for the purpose of opening up more global supply.
I understand that, but if we continue to extend them, they're not time limited. I want to get a final question in on food for peace because
You know, that's actually the sign of a stupid politician when they ask someone a question about like a policy or a decision or a government program that's not actually related to their department. That's literally the sign of a stupid politician. So, like this woman, she's asking him questions that he can't even answer because that would be up to Scott Bessent, right? So it just goes to show like she's just literally asking stupid questions and she doesn't even care. Guys, here's the thing. She does not even care about the answer. So this entire like Senate committee hearing, especially, you know, from the side of the Democrats, what they're basically looking for is sound bites and sound clips that they can use in the upcoming like midterms or, you know, whatever, right? So they're basically just trying to create some sort of sound bites or something so that they can play this during the midterms and be like, look at me, like I was so good at this, vote for me to continue representing you, right? Like it's literally what all politicians do. It's just like they don't actually care about the answer. They just want to find like their gotcha moment or, you know, just like create a sound bite or whatever to help them get reelected. Because like, especially with this one, it's very obvious. She doesn't actually care about making a difference in her country. All she cares about is getting reelected. So the only thing on her head, the only thing in her mind, in her, you know, empty mind, is what can I say or do that like my comms team can then turn into a soundbite and I can use this, you know, as part of my reelection campaign footage, right? That's literally all she cares about. She doesn't actually care about the United States. And, you know, that's the challenge with career politicians. Okay.
as you know, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has deepened the humanitarian needs in food insecure countries such as Sudan, South Sudan. And yet in your opening statement, you said that our aid targets those who are most in need. But I think it's very concerning that the country selection process for Food for Peace, which I understand is led by the Department of State, includes only 2 priority countries from World Food Program hunger hotspots. That's Haiti and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So the question I have is, why are we adding countries that aren't facing acute food insecurity, like El Salvador, Guatemala, and Rwanda? Why are we not helping countries who are facing acute, well, famine in some cases? Sudan, Gaza, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Syria, Somalia. These are all countries that have humanitarian crises, and yet we're helping countries that don't have acute food insecurity.
Yeah. No, so a couple points. First of all, on Gaza, we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars, including after the ceasefire, and providing through the World Food Program and other entities, and we continue to do so. I think if we're not the world's largest donor, I'd be surprised because it's a massive amount of money that we've provided through those mechanisms of various means. On the point of Sudan in particular, the complication in Sudan, which I wish were different, and we're very involved in this. I mean, I had a meeting on Sudan yesterday. The problem in Sudan has largely not been our unwillingness to provide funds. We are willing to step forward, and we have the flexibility through what we've been able to do with foreign aid to surge up that. It's been distribution. It's been the ability to get that. So as an example, in these conversations we're having between the warring sides, one of the things we're trying to identify is 4 safe spots where people can go receive humanitarian care, assistance, where we can actually have the outside groups, the NGOs, international organizations that we contract with, have the ability to go in and actually deliver the food without having their trucks hijacked or blown up or their workers killed. That's been the fundamental challenge in Sudan, is distribution. The distribution is being threatened because we don't have conditions on the ground that allow for it. And so to allocate money towards something that we can't distribute is unwise until we have that in place. That's deeply tied to the ability to have a peace deal, which I can tell you has been very frustrating. On the one hand, with Sudan, we had a donor conference.
So the issue in Sudan as well is that the Muslim Brotherhood is there and the Islamic regime is there as well, right? So there's all of that happening as well.
In Berlin.
I don't want
That's why I'm listening to like his response on Sudan, because it is linked to the Middle East.
to interrupt you, Mr. Secretary, but
Well, you
I'm out of
did.
time, and it doesn't explain why we are providing food for countries that are not insecure. I appreciate the challenges in Sudan. We have those challenges in many places, but because we have dismantled the distribution network when we eliminated USAID, we've exacerbated those challenges in countries around the world, and we are not providing the help based on humanitarian needs, and that's my concern. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe like feed Americans first, and then once Americans are well off, then, feed other people. I don't know. Have you tried putting America first?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ricketts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Secretary of State, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Good to see you. Communist China is trying to win the AI race, and they will use it, for example, to dominate our military if they're able to do that, and so many other ways. A world where Communist China is dominant in AI is very bad for the United States and for the entire world. That's why it's critical that us and our allies cannot lose this race. Semiconductor supply chains, particularly semiconductor manufacturing equipment, SMEs, are critical to winning this competition. It's one area that Beijing is spending billions and billions of dollars to be able to produce chips in China, and they've failed to be able to produce those high-end chips so far. President Trump understands this better than anyone because
as much as I want to watch this part, I need to fast forward to the Iran part, just because I really want to focus this particular episode on Iran.
the semi-manufacturing equipment that's going to Communist China.
And that's our hope, is that we can create
Okay. Oops.
or consensus behind that thinking.
Well, Mr. Secretary, that's why I recently introduced the Match Act with Senators Kim, Risch, and Schumer to let.
Okay, yeah. So now he's getting into the political side. It's right. So guys, again, another midterms are coming up. So I'm just pointing it out. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like, I'm not criticizing him. All I'm saying is, like, when he says, well, that's why I recently introduced the Match Act with, blah, 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 whatever the Match Act is. I don't know what that is. But so, guys, everyone's literally making, like, sound bites. They're looking for the sound bites for the midterms, right? Because they're going to use this in their, like, political stuff. Okay.
My best. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being with us today. Despite the differences that existed between Republicans and Democrats prior to this administration on how to approach Iran's nuclear program, the theory was basically the same, that we were going to impose significant harm on the Iranian economy in order to force them to the table to negotiate. What is happening now is fundamentally different. This war and the...
So that's not entirely accurate. The economy of Iran is already in shambles. Guys, remember, this entire thing started because on February 28, the rial reached a historical low of 1.4 million rials to $1. And that sparked a nationwide strike by the businesses, also known as the bazaris. And within 24 hours, that nationwide strike went from, striking about the economy to calling for revolution and the overthrow of the Islamic regime and the return of the Shah, literally within 24 hours, right? The Iranian economy, guys, is already collapsed. Iran is a failed state thanks to the Islamic regime. The only thing that's happening now is that the United States is actually cutting off the funds of the Islamic regime itself. That's why they're feeling the pressure right now, because the economic sanctions, they were still able to avoid all of that by using, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, whatever, right? Also they were using money, like money exchanges in the UAE to launder money. They were using China. That's why Scott Bessent has been all over on Operation Economic Fury, sanctioning all these places and shutting them down. All right, let's go back a little bit. I just wanted to make that clear. So the economy of Iran has already been in shambles due to the mismanagement of the Islamic regime itself. Because when you put a bunch of 7th century inbred mullahs in charge of a country, right? And all they know is la 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 la, and marrying 9-year-old girls or whatever. They don't know how to run a country. They don't understand the economy. They've literally used Iran as an ATM to line their own pockets in the millions, sometimes billions of dollars, and to fund terrorism around the world.
In order to force them to the table to, the theory was basically the same, that we were going to impose significant harm on the Iranian economy in order to force them to the table to negotiate. What is happening now is fundamentally different. This war and the administration's decision to blockade has now held the entire world economy and the US economy hostage to the ability to negotiate an agreement with
How is
Iran.
the US economy
This
hostage?
is why the entire country is seized by the question of when there will be an agreement, because apparently until there is an agreement, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed.
Since when has the United States economy relied on the economy of the Islamic regime? What? That's insane. So obviously this guy knows nothing about the economy or politics or geopolitics.
There is a cost to the Iranian economy, but now there is a devastating cost to the US economy. It has been indecipherable, the information coming from the administration, especially in the past several weeks, as we get signals that a deal is imminent. The president said yesterday he's bored by the negotiations. He doesn't care whether we get a deal.
Yeah, he doesn't care, because if the Islamic regime doesn't sign the surrender deal, President Trump will boom, boom, boom. That's what he means when he says he doesn't care. Like, this guy is like literally taking it out of context, as if like he doesn't care if the situation is resolved. No, that's not what President Trump says. And, this guy's like misinterpreting those statements in bad faith.
I think it's really important for us to understand what your bottom lines are, what you're asking for in this negotiation, what commitments you need Iran to make in order for you to release the blockade, and we hope for them to release the blockade.
The commitments are very simple. No nuclear enrichment. United States has to go in and remove the enriched uranium. A commitment to stop funding their, stopping to fund their terrorist proxy groups, severely limiting or stopping their missile program, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Those are the conditions. Like, it's always been there. It's been there. It's never changed.
As well. So give us a little insight into what your bottom lines are. What is going to get the strait reopened? Because this is kind of the only question that matters for American consumers right now. And every day we get wildly different signals from the president as to whether he even is engaged in this question as to whether the strait is going to reopen.
Yeah, I think your question gets right to the heart of the matter. So I think it's a good question. Let me first bifurcate two things. The only reason there's a blockade, the only reason why there's a U.S. blockade is because Iran has closed this. They're firing on commercial ships. and they've mined large segments of Hormuz, international waters. And so the blockade is only against Iranian ships. And it's very simple. The notion is if no one's ships are going to get out, then Iran's ships aren't going to get out either. We can't live in a world in which they get to close the straits and tell everybody, pay us a toll or we'll blow you up, but their ships get to go out unfettered. So that's the reason why there's a blockade. There wouldn't have been a blockade if Iran had agreed to do what they said they would do when the ceasefire kicked in, which is they were going to open the straits. So let me just focus on the straits for a moment. Number one, what they're doing is unlawful and illegal. There isn't a country on earth other than Iran, and maybe Oman that flirted with it, who's in favor of what Iran is doing in the straits. The Chinese are against it. The Russians are against it. Everyone is against it. The whole world is against it. So condition number one is they have to reopen the straits. And reopening the straits means the following. Ships can sail through international waters the way they can do through other choke points around the world without being fired upon, without paying a toll. That's condition number one.
But the strait is closed because of our decision to invade Iran. This is a consequence of our military action. So I guess I'm not interested in litigating that question. We all know why the strait is closed, because you took military action against Iran, and we knew ahead of time that that would be their likely response. The question is, how are we going to get it reopened? Are you going to drive a bargain that is so tough and so hard that the strait remains closed? So how are we going to get it open?
The first thing, that is a predicate to anything else happening. The straits have to be reopened. So the way to think about it is this. If Iran wants to be able to move its oil again through the strait, they will have to reopen the straits. If they refuse to do so, then we have other options available to us, but we would prefer to negotiate the opening of this, which means
tell us about the negotiations. What do you need from them in order to get the strait reopened? We need the strait reopened tomorrow.
Well, what needs to happen is very simple. They need to announce that they will no longer fire on commercial ships that are going through or threaten to fire on ships, because in many cases, ships just won't move. They won't go, not because they got fired on, but because of the risk of being fired upon. And so they have to announce very clearly, the straits are now open. We're not charging a toll. We will help remove the mines that they put in there, and they will not fire on ships.
But the president says they also need to make commitments on their nuclear program. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What commitments do they need to make in order for the strait
to not have a
The
nuclear
second thing they have to
program?
agree to as part of this is, so in addition to the straits, that's the predicate that opens the door to phase two. Phase two is they have to commit to very specific negotiations on highly enriched, the disposition of the highly enriched uranium that still is buried deep in a mountain somewhere. They have to agree on negotiating severe and long-term limitations and or cancellation of enrachment activity in their country.
In the second phase of negotiations.
Well, that would obviously, these are highly technical matters, so I don't think you could work those out in 5 days. That would require a team of experts to meet over a 30, 60, 90-day period and work out the details, but they have to commit to their willingness to do that. For example, they have to commit to say, we will dispose of the enriched uranium, and the question now is, what are the mechanisms by which we do so? That can be negotiated.
Final question. In order to get to that second phase, are you willing to release sanctions or release frozen money that the United States is withholding from Iran?
Right now, everything that's been discussed with them is that any sanctions relief. Now, remember, sanctions come, there's international sanctions, there's congressional sanctions, there's executive sanctions. So some we can release and some we cannot. But any sanctions relief is condition-based, which means it has to be in return for the reason why those sanctions were put in place in the first place, which is their nuclear program. So yeah, look, Iran is being sanctioned because they enrich uranium. Iran is being sanctioned because they've highly enriched uranium. Iran is being sanctioned because of their nuclear activities. If they agree to give up those things, there will be sanctions relief associated with their commitment and compliance with those agreements.
Sanctions relief just in exchange for reopening the strait.
No, that's not been discussed. No. That's not been offered.
Why would they do that? Why would the United States give sanctions relief for reopening the Strait of Hormuz? That's literally counterintuitive. Wow. Oh my gosh. That Democrat is like, guys, that Democrat, that guy, Murphy or whatever his name is, like, he sounds just like a politician, you know, from like the Islamic regime. Like he might as well run for office in occupied Iran and just yell Durka Durka and he would get elected. Like that's wild what I heard right there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Rubio, it's good to see you here. I want to commend you and the administration for actually implementing a foreign policy that advances America's interests. Thank you. If we could, I'd like to start with the Philippines, an area that we know very well. It's a geographic center of the Indo-Pacific region. It's an area that is along critical sea lanes where a tremendous amount of world trade and energy
So this Philippines-
commerce actually move. A strong alliance with the Philippines clearly is in.
Okay, so this guy probably has like a big like Filipino community in his district. That's what I would guess anyway. All right, let's see where we get to Iran.
The new administration is dramatically
Project, which when I was ambassador to Japan, worked very hard to get that back for America. And I see that as a tremendous opportunity for us to deepen our economic ties. Yucatan Peninsula, both in port facilities and in quarrying operations, only to be confiscated by the Mexican government. Then the Mexican government came.
Okay.
extension, the embassies, to play a leading role in economic diplomacy. And so I would argue that virtually every
Haggerty. Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to Senator Haggerty for mentioning our work together in Philippines and Mexico. Mr. Secretary, you won't be surprised that I'm going to ask you about the Western Hemisphere. You and I traded the gavel and the ranking on the Western Hemisphere subcommittee when you were on this committee, and that was good, productive work. I want to ask you about Operation Southern Spear.
officer on the deck that has to make a determination theaters around the world.
Here's what I want to ask you about. So you're generally aware of the targeting criteria. Narco-traffickers. We've attacked narco-traffickers. How?
Okay.
The chief.
So I think what you're asking is why haven't the Office of Legal Counsel provided it? They don't work for the National Security
I'm
Council.
actually
They don't work for
asking,
me.
will you use your influence as
Well, I will
President's
certainly
chief
inquire as to
national
why.
security
Here's what I'll do.
advisor?
I can certainly inquire as to why it has not been available. I don't think there's a reason why. I am not aware that. In fact, my understanding is they have provided documentation to the committee and
Not the
as
opinion.
part of the war.
Not the opinion.
Well, that's different.
And you wouldn't accept that.
All right, well, let me
if you were
take
sitting
that
on
back and
this
ask
side
the
of
Office of
dais.
Legal Counsel. But it's certainly, they provided the legal rationale for the strike. You're asking for the actual written opinion the way it was
Which
in
they
the other.
provided us
All
in
right, I
Southern
understand.
Spear and absolute resolve.
I'll
Thanks,
take
Mr.
that
Chair.
back.
Thank you. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Secretary Rubio, for being.
You look like rickets. I apologize. This threw me off a second.
Well, look, bald is beautiful, and we
a new caucus.
can't help that. But thanks for all of your efforts. You are a very effective spokesperson for not only President Trump and the administration, but for the United States, and I'm grateful for that. Was wondering at the outset if you could talk to us a little bit about the fractured Iranian regime and how that might be making negotiations more difficult. One of the things I've wondered, for example, are whether the diplomatic Iranian channels are sort of crosswise at odds with or working hand in glove with the IRGC, which is itself causing a lot of these ceasefire violations, or is it all sort of coordinated chaos to try to undermine and tip the scales in favor of Iran in the negotiations?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Actually, that's a good question.
Let me try to give this answer to you in a way that's not boring or wonky, because it's been a shift. Obviously, the original Supreme Leader, the one that was there, is no longer with us. His
The one
son
that
takes
still hasn't
over.
been
Nobody
buried
hears
yet.
from him for a month. By all reports, open source reporting, I think you've all seen it. He was severely injured in the same strike, and so forth.
Are you confident he's still alive, by the way?
Yeah, I think there's indications that, in fact, we've not heard from him publicly. We haven't seen him publicly, and I would imagine, given what's happened to multiple leaders in that system, being very public is probably not something that's recommended for them internally. But that said, I think there are indications out there that he is increasingly engaging at some level, although all of his communications have been in writing and through intermediaries. So the way to think about it is the following. You have the Supreme Leader, and understand that at the end of the day, the Supreme Leader in their system there really is no analogy to it in our system or anybody else's system. It is a theological office. It was the head of the Islamic Republic in the sense of the ultimate decision maker, and every major decision has to be run by them.
Yeah.
They are advised by a council. It's not clear if it's 6 people or 8 people, but there is a council made up of both IRGC and other elements of the regime that surround that Supreme Leader, and ultimately that council.
So guys, he's talking about the Beit Rahbari. So if I bring up my like Boom Boom Bingo sheet, okay? Where is it? If I bring up the Boom Boom Bingo sheet, okay? He's talking about this, right? So there are, well, let me make this. I'm gonna go like this. So there are people that are, within the office, although some have been boomed. But then you also have the Security Council. And then you also have, if I move this over, how do I move it over? Assembly of Experts also, although most of the Assembly of Experts have been boomed. So basically you have like the Beit Rahbari, which is these people. And then you also have like this group here. So that's what Marco Rubio is speaking about right now when he's speaking about these institutions. And that's why he's like, there's like 6 of them or 8 of them, because I mean, who knows, right? Like they're all like going around. But yeah, okay. So let's go back a little bit. Now you know what he's referring to.
The original Supreme Leader, the one that was there, is no longer with us. His son takes over. Nobody hears from him for a month. By all reports, open source reporting, I think you've all seen it. He was severely injured in the same strike and so forth.
Are you confident he's still alive, by the way?
Yeah, I think there's indications that, in fact, we've not heard from him publicly. We haven't seen him publicly. And I would imagine, given what's happened to multiple leaders in that system, being very public is probably not something that's recommended for them internally. But that said, I think there are indications out there that he is increasingly engaging at some level, although all of his communications have been in writing and through intermediaries. So the way to think about it is the following. You have the Supreme Leader, and understand that at the end of the day, the Supreme Leader in their system there really is no analogy to it in our system or anybody else's system. It is a theological office. It was the head of the Islamic Republic in the sense of the ultimate decision maker. And every major decision has to be run by them. They are advised by a council. It's not clear if it's 6 people or 8 people, but there is a council made up of both IRGC and other elements of the regime that surround that Supreme Leader. And ultimately, that council has to sign off on anything. And then there are the people you see on TV, like Arachi, who's out there every single day, and Golubov, who's the Speaker of the Majils, who's been playing a pretty prominent role. And they are the ones that they have sent to negotiation.
Oh, so now Marco Rubio is talking about these people. So if you go back to the Boom Boom Bingo sheet, so he was referring to initially these people and these people who kind of like surround the Supreme Dictator. When he's referring to like the people who have to like sign off, it's these people, although I'm increasingly thinking these people are playing a role as well. And then when he's speaking about the people that you're seeing on TV, this is Araghchi. Araghchi is the Foreign Affairs Minister, this one here. Now, here's the thing. Araghchi, even though they're both like, technically like politicians, they're on opposing ends. Araghchi, okay? Araghchi is actually working with this guy, Vahidi, okay? Vahidi is against Ghalibaf. So Araghchi is on TV, Ghalibaf is on TV. And then when Marco Rubio said the word, I don't remember how he pronounced it, but it's pronounced Majlis. Okay, so Majlis is the Iranian word for parliament. So Ghalibaf is currently the speaker of the parliament, also known as Majlis. So that's what Marco Rubio is referring to here. So, but you guys are familiar with all this because, we've been going over the Boom Boom Bingo sheet for quite a while. So essentially, you have these people who are sort of working behind the scenes, and then you have Araghchi and Ghalibaf, who are, some of the ones who are more prominent on TV, especially on like the English side as well. All right. That was a little reference there.
But that said, I think there are indications out there that he is increasingly engaging at some level, although all of his communications have been in writing and through intermediaries. So the way to think about it is the following. You have the Supreme Leader, and understand that at the end of the day, the Supreme Leader in their system there really is no analogy to it in our system or anybody else's system. It is a theological office. It was the head of the Islamic Republic in the sense of the ultimate decision maker. And every major decision has to be run by them. They are advised by a council. It's not clear if it's 6 people or 8 people, but there is a council made up of both IRGC and other elements of the regime that surround that supreme leader. And ultimately, that council has to sign off on anything. And then there are the people you see on TV, like Arachi, who's out there every single day, and Golubov, who's the speaker of the Majils, who's been playing a pretty prominent role. And they are the ones that they have sent to negotiations and so forth. It is our view of the system, as we understand it, and as it's been expressed to us both by the intermediaries and by Iran directly, that what Arachi and Golubov bring or take from us, they then have to run back to this council and ultimately get guidance from them. And that process oftentimes takes 3 to 5 days to get a response. Now, some of it is logistical. They're operating probably using couriers and things of this nature. Part of it is internal fissures on exactly what they should agree to or not agree to. I think the second point that needs to be driven in this regard is that there is evidence that there are communications issues within the regime as well. So, for example, it's pretty clear that at the outset of hostilities in the conflict, they had delegated decision-making to field commanders. And so oftentimes field commanders had delegated authority to act on a, let's say, a pre-operational planning that already put in place. And so unlike our system, where perhaps you know that the president or the secretary of war is directly making orders and decisions, or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, in their system, a lot of decision-making at the tactical level, like which ships to hit and so forth, are being made at the commander level. So that's
why from the outset it can look like fire-ready aim, but it's part of the design of the system, perhaps?
Well, I think it was a design of the system in the sense of regime survival and the ability to operate in case there was decapitation strikes or people are removed. But let's go back to the essence of the negotiations. What's complicated them is you ultimately are negotiating with people who then have to negotiate within their own system to see what they're allowed to give and what they're allowed to agree to. What is abundantly clear is that Iran is facing severe internal economic. All the problems Iran had before this conflict not only are still there, but they're worse. All the things that led to the protests, all of these are worse than they were before. And I think there's definitely elements within that regime that understand it. And then there are other elements of it that are more immune to it and perhaps more resistant to making agreements. And so what we are working through is in many cases is delays in getting the responses to people. And this is why you see reporting about there might be a deal in the next few days, because internally it takes time to get responses from them, sometimes upward to 5 or 6 days.
Undoubtedly, they're using that to their advantage, sort of like the...
Guys, Marco Rubio just confirmed everything that we've been saying. Everything that I've been saying about how fractured the Islamic regime is and how there's a lot of internal divisions and infighting, and how President Trump's statements are actually adding fuel to the fire and making it even more difficult. That, like, Marco Rubio literally just confirmed that. He literally just confirmed that the reason that they can't even come to like a deal is because the negotiators will say one thing, but then they go back, and then, you know, the Durka jihadis are like, no, like bomb them all, la, 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 right? So Marco Rubio literally just confirmed everything that I've been saying for the last, few months. And we're seeing that internal division and fracture even more now. Wow.
The car dealer where the salesman has to go talk to his manager and make you wait.
See reporting about there might be a deal in the next few days, because internally it takes time to get responses from them, sometimes upward to 5 or 6 days.
Undoubtedly, they're using that to their advantage, sort of like the car dealer where the salesman has to go talk to his manager and make you wait and think about it for a while.
Even more complicated than that.
Even more complicated than that. One more question. I think we could benefit from hearing from you about the need to zero out funding for a couple of entities, including the National Endowment for Democracy and USADF. Can you tell us about that?
Well, look, these programs, I think, have served a purpose in the past, and obviously there's a congressional role to play here, right? I mean, at the end of the day, these programs have had, especially the National Endowment for Democracy, has had support in Congress in the past. And look, I was here for 16 years. I understand that you're going to pass an appropriations bill, and the appropriations bill is going to have things in it that we don't have in ours. That's just the way it is. And we understand it. We'll make it work. But we are concerned, or have been concerned in the past, about organizations that sort of have lost their purpose and what they're advancing. And at the end of the day, look, we have a lot of resources. The United States is the richest country in the world. We have the largest government budget in the world, but we don't have unlimited resources. We still have to be able to strategically spend our money. And the State Department, you know, when I took over, a lot of people are like, oh, that's a mess. State Department's not that big. The majority of our employees are local hires overseas. We have, you know, foreign service officers, career civil servants, but compared to some of these other agencies that are out there, we're not that large, and yet we have a global footprint. We're really, other than the department, I would say beyond the Department of War, we're the only ones that are present almost everywhere on the planet. So we have limited resources, and we have to be able to allocate those resources in ways that are driven by the core mission of advancing our national security. And oftentimes that will mean that things we have paid for in the past, we can't continue to fund because there are other things. It might be good, but there might be something else that's more important and even better. Other cases, we may still spend money on a purpose, but we want to be driven not just by, we don't want to be judged just by how much money we're spending on something. We also want outcomes for it. We want to show outcomes. That's been the goal behind these MOUs, these compacts with the 32 countries that we've entered into in a week plan, is we're not just trying to solve the disease problem this year. We're trying to build the local capacity so that 5 years from now, they won't need aid anymore because their local systems can handle it. I'm saying 5 years, some countries may take 10 years, but nonetheless, that's the goal, and it's been very well received.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Merkley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Secretary. Good to see you. As Senator Shaheen noted, you've expressed that no one died as a result of the sudden shutdown of AID. And I did ask you last time you were.
Okay, let's go to the next part about Iran. Let's see.
Humanitarian aspect to it. There's clearly there's an economic visiting camp, the prospect. We don't know.
We're talking about American leadership and American interests. And later this month, the G7 is going to be meeting in France. And then next month, NATO meeting in Turkey. Just overview, what are the priorities you're going to go into those meetings with?
G7?
G7 and NATO, yeah, coming up next month. In this.
Well, NATO would be a fun meeting. Let's start with the G7 one. The G7 forum this year has largely been focused, obviously, because of the Straits. So when I went to the foreign ministers meeting in March, a lot of the conversations in April were about the Straits. And the one point we've made is, and what's interesting is a lot of the countries involved there, even though it's not a military forum per se, the UK and France are members of it. They've put together this initiative, which they say they will send minesweepers and escort ships, but they will do so once hostilities is ended. Kind of a catch-22. On the one hand, I mean, why do you need naval escorts if no one's shooting at the ships? That said, I don't diminish the utility of it because I would imagine the first few ships to go through are going to like to be escorted. So I think that's going to be a key feature of that conversation. I think there's a shared interest in all these countries on rare earth minerals and supply chains generally. I think there is a growing global consensus, and we had a great, maybe a few of you had attended part of it. We had a great ministerial here earlier this year on rare earths and supply chains that brought in dozens of countries, and all the G7 countries were represented at it. And so I think that's going to be a feature here is how do we diversify the global supply chain on anything from rare earths to pharmaceuticals? There's growing consensus. So I think that point will be quite dominant. And then given the makeup of who's in the G7, the Russia-Ukraine conflict will always come up because obviously it directly impacts at least 3 or 4 of those members who are on the continent. So we will also, and I don't recall exactly who the French have invited, but in addition to the G7, they'll always invite 2 or 3 other countries to attend. I believe Ukraine has been invited, if I'm not mistaken. There's usually a couple other countries that they'll invite that are not members of G7. But I think those issues will dominate depending on where we are with the Straits, and then clearly the critical minerals and supply chains has been a key focus of G7 actions. The last point is, I think there's been an interest and I think Canada deserves credit for this. The Canadians have really taken a lead, and we've been very supportive of this, in highlighting places like Haiti. And as a result of these G7 meetings, we've actually had a number of countries in the G7, including Japan, step up and contribute to the effort there.
And the reason I mentioned NATO, there's an article in The Hill, and Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that we put this in the record. It says Sweden is now America's most valuable tech ally. You're talking about working together with other countries. It goes on to say, this is just last week, Sweden joined NATO. They've now signed the bilateral defense cooperation agreement. They said in March, Sweden became the first European Union member state to sign the Pax Silica Declaration, Washington's flagship initiative to secure global AI and semiconductor supply chains, and now the technology prosperity deal. I want to know how you've accomplished so much, and is this a model for U.S. relationships going forward with NATO?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Sweden is because they, and Finland to this to the equal extent, is because they were not members of NATO for many, many years, they had a self-sufficiency in their defenses. And so now that they've joined, they've actually added to the equation. I'm not here to beat up on any specific country, but generally speaking, the countries you added to NATO were countries that needed from NATO. Sweden and Finland have actually contributed because they brought their own defense industry, their own advanced technologies. So they've been a great partner. They've been an extraordinary partner. We were just there because we had the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Sweden, and it was phenomenal. And I think that Sweden is a great ally and a country that we're continuing to find a lot of synergy and cooperation with, especially on the field of technology, but also on defense. I mean, they have their own defense industrial base, which is an impressive defense industrial base. I wish every country in NATO had what they have, but I understand why Sweden has it.
In number of travels that a number of members have done in bipartisan ways, we found out as we go around Europe that most countries will say they've been too dependent on the United States for military, too dependent on Russia for energy, and too dependent on China for materials. This administration has really made
Okay, so not really part of the show, but it kind of is, because I just kind of wanted to watch this Senate hearing on Iran completely uninterrupted, but there is some breaking news. So let me just play this really quickly. Kuwait, poor Kuwait is once again under attack right now by the terrorist Islamic regime occupying Iran as we speak. Okay, let me change my layout so you guys can see. So there you go. That's according to my friend Emily Schrader, who's saying Kuwait under attack of ballistic missiles by the Islamic Republic of Iran as the IRGC and US clash in Hormuz. So things are escalating, not really ceasefire-y. I mean, it doesn't really look too ceasefire-y to me. But all right, let's continue.
these nations step up to do what they need to do in terms of putting the money forward of moving from 2% to 5%.
Countries are on track to do that, others are not. Let me just speak about it in general terms. There's a real challenge. On the one hand, they've made these pledges that they're going to increase their defense spending and their defense capability. It actually has to be on defense. That's the first thing. You can't say that pensions
I do have to
for former soldiers and sailors
go forward.
Programs would have built in the United. This is not an anti-NATO statement. Same time as I'm in NATO, I have to speak to the Indo-Pacific East. No cooperate like that makes shared with, but these sovereign national territories.
Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Secretary. This is your first public hearing since President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu launched an illegal war against Iran.
Oh my God.
Netanyahu
Launched an illegal war? You idiot. It's not an illegal war. The Islamic regime declared war against the United States and Israel back in 1979 when they started yelling, Allahu Akbar, death to America, death to Israel. And by the way, did you forget about the American hostage crisis? 444 days? How is this an illegal war? What makes a war legal or illegal? Like, even the whole term illegal war literally doesn't make sense. War is war. There's no legal war or illegal war about it. Like, this is insane. Let me go a few of your super chats and then we'll continue. Todd Ruff Garden says the Democrats have TDS and nothing Trump does is good in their eyes. I agree. President Trump could literally walk on water and the Democrats would claim that he doesn't know how to swim. Like, that's how they would spin that. Adam says the problem is Democrats don't care about us. That's true. It is, like, it's unfortunate. Yeah. And then BK99 Iran, IRGC is attacking Kuwait. Yeah, I just saw that. So, wow. Gonna keep an eye for that. All right, let's continue.
Who said he's been waiting 40 years to do this. Turns out he finally found a president who was both stupid and reckless.
Yeah, I wonder what this idiot would say about what's currently happening with the IRGC attacking Kuwait. Is that illegal? I don't know. Is that not illegal? Like, why is the IRGC attacking Kuwait? Like, silent on that, right? That's how hypocritical these people are. They're literally carrying water for Islamic terrorists.
Enough to join him. The war has killed 14 American service members, wounded hundreds more, and killed thousands of civilians. It's driving up the price of...
First of all, do not ever politicize the blood of Iranian people for your own political gain, okay? Thousands and thousands of innocent civilians have not been boom-boomed. Thousands and thousands of IRGC members, people affiliated with the Islamic regime, have been exterminated, and rightfully so. Now, have there been civilian casualties? Yes, absolutely. There have been civilian casualties. And we mourn the loss of every single life. But the Iranian people, not me, like not even those of us outside, okay? Iranian people inside of the country want this war. I shouldn't even call it a war, because it's not. The Iranian people inside of occupied Iran want the international humanitarian intervention. They have paid for it with blood. Over 40,000 innocent, unarmed Iranians were slaughtered on January 8 and 9 by the same Islamic regime that this Democrat is now carrying water for. Let me just share this message. Let me just share this message from an Iranian, okay? This was on January 8. It was right when the massacre began, and it was right before the Islamic regime shut down the internet. This is one of the last videos that we got from inside of occupied Iran. See, you see January 8, okay? January 8, that's when the slaughter began, and that's when the Islamic regime shut down the internet right after that, okay? Watch this.
Hi, Mr. Trump. Here is Mashhad City. Ayatollah killed my people. Please help my people. Please help to Reza Pahlavi. Come to Iran. Baby Netanyahu, please call to Iran. Please help to Iranian people. Ayatollah killed my people. Please help.
Let me, I know he has a little bit of an accent, so I'll just repeat what he says. This is on January 8th, right when the massacre began. You can literally hear the gunshots and screams in the background.
Hi, Mr. Trump.
So he says, hi, Mr. Trump.
Here is Mashhad City.
Here is Mashhad City. Let me show you where Mashhad City is on the map. Okay? Let me zoom out. Okay. So, Mashhad disappeared. Where'd Mashhad go? There you go. So there's Mashhad. Let me zoom out. There you go. So that's Mashhad City, okay? So that's where it is, just for reference. Okay. So he says, hi, Mr. Trump.
Hi, Mr. Trump. Here is Mashhad City.
Here is Mashhad City.
Ayatollah killed my people. Please.
He says, Ayatollah killed my people, please help. He's referring to the supreme dictator, Khamenei, and the Islamic regime. He's saying, Ayatollah killed my people, please help.
Help to my people.
Please help to my people.
Please.
Please.
Help to Reza Pahlavi.
He's like, please help to Reza Pahlavi. Reza Pahlavi is the current Shah of Iran, His Royal Highness, who's the leader of the Iranian Lion and Sun National Revolution. And he's the only one that we trust to transition Iran from an Islamic dictatorship to a functioning secular democratic society. So even on January 8th, right when the massacre began, he's like, please help Reza Pahlavi come to Iran.
Help to Reza Pahlavi come to Iran. Bibi Netanyahu, please come to Iran.
He's like, Bibi Netanyahu, please come to Iran.
Please help to Iranian people.
Please help Iranian people.
Ayatollah killed my people.
Ayatollah killed my people.
Please help.
Okay. So now that I translated it, I mean, not translate, but now that I just kind of repeated it, now just watch this again. Watch this again. So whenever someone says, oh, Iranians didn't want this, no, Iranians want, you know why? I'll tell you why. Because after 47 years of brutal occupation, and after the mass slaughter of over 40,000 innocent unarmed Iranians on January 8 and 9 alone, and guys, the number is actually much higher than that. Okay, it's much higher. But after all that, Iranians know that if the Islamic regime survives, that's more dangerous. And so Iranians have said they're literally willing to risk their lives. They're literally willing to lose their lives in the conflict, in any sort of humanitarian intervention. They're willing to lose their lives if it means overthrowing the Islamic regime and freeing the country for good. Iranians have made that choice. They have made that choice. And it is shameful that you have, these Democrats who are completely ignoring that very, very difficult decision that Iranians have made. And just talking about, Iranian civilians and using the spilled blood of Iranian people for personal and political gain. It's disgusting. It's shameful. Where were these people when on January 8, the Islamic regime started mass slaughtering people, right? Let's watch this again.
Hi, Mr. Trump. Here is Mashhad City. Ayatollah killed my people. Please help to my people. Please help to Reza Pahlavi come to Iran. Bibi Netanyahu, please come to Iran. Please help to Iranian people. Ayatollah killed my people. Please help.
One of the last videos that we received before the Islamic regime shut down the internet. Okay. Let's go back to this garbage Democrat now who's shamefully politicizing the blood of my people to push his Trump derangement syndrome agenda in support of the Islamic regime. Shame on him.
Prime Minister Netanyahu launched an illegal war against Iran. Netanyahu said he's been waiting 40 years to do this.
Good.
Turns out he finally found a president who was both stupid and reckless enough to join him. The war has killed 14 American service members, wounded hundreds more, and killed thousands of civilians. It's driving up the price of gas, food, and much more. Trump obviously doesn't care. He called high gas prices peanuts and said, I don't think about Americans' financial situation. That's from the President of the United States. And all for what? The President told us 91 days ago that we had, quote, won the war in Iran. Last year, he told the country Iran's key enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Was that false? Let's face it, Mr. Secretary, the Trump foreign policy.
The issue isn't whether or not the secret underground nuclear facilities have been obliterated. The issue is the fact that the Islamic regime are rebuilding them. And they've said that we will never stop trying to acquire nuclear weapons. How stupid are you?
Has become a dumpster fire. This is the same president who's more interested in flattering Vladimir Putin than in protecting Ukrainian sovereignty.
Wow.
The president who lifted restrictions on the transfer of sophisticated U.S. chips to China, but came back from his trip there with nothing but ballroom envy. He tweeted about that the other day. This is the president who brought on.
What an idiot. Like, the fact that President Trump is posting about ballroom envy, that's actually an insult to China, because what President Trump, what President Trump is basically saying is that the only good thing about visiting China was their ballroom, right? Like, he's not complimenting like Chinese, military strength or the economy or the culture or, whatever, right? All he's saying is, oh, that's a great ballroom. Like, what, do you think it would have been better if President Trump came back and said, oh, I'm so envious of the Chinese economy? Or, I don't know, like, I'm envious of Chinese military strength? Or I'm envious of communism? Like, how stupid can you be? Oh my gosh.
Elon Musk to take a chainsaw to AID, which has enabled the current Ebola outbreak in the DRC. We've also witnessed corrupt crypto deals with the UAE royal family that have enriched the Trump family at the expense of our national security. We've seen an administration engage in extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean, hijack Venezuelan oil, threaten to invade Greenland, and weaken the NATO alliance. Here at home, a Reagan-appointed judge said that you and former Secretary Noem abused your powers when you locked up and still seek to deport students for protesting the destruction of Gaza. The Reagan-appointed judge said you did that, quote, primarily on account of
the guy wasn't a student. He's like a 33-year-old terrorist.
Speaking of Gaza,
he's not even a citizen.
The so-called Board of Peace seems to have run around. Meanwhile, while Senator Rubio once proclaimed that the U.S. must, quote, work to ensure that refugees who flee war, torture, and persecution are provided safe environments to live and thrive in. Now, as Secretary of State in this administration, you have capped refugees at a record low of 17,500, and white South Africans, Afrikaners, have comprised roughly 99% of those slots, Mr. Secretary. A race-based refugee system. At the same time, the president's preventing Cuban political refugees from entering the United States, even as you've imposed a near oil blockade on that repressive regime. The stated goal is to change the government there, but the only real change is humanitarian crisis inflicted on millions of people, not members of the regime. And in that regard, Mr. Secretary, I have a question for you regarding the designation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism. On the very first week, at least, of this administration, the administration reinstated that. And in a recent January 26 EO, you made statements suggesting connections to Hezbollah and Hamas. The previous administration did a thorough review with the intelligence community and concluded that there was no evidence that Cuba was engaged in ongoing state sponsor of terrorism. Did you find new evidence to support that conclusion?
Well, first of all, let me just say that's your question, but you made this long statement of which I disagree with most of it. We won't have time to address every point that you made. So let's stick to Cuba specific, because that's the question that you asked. Cuba has sponsored terrorism and it's been supported groups. For example, virtually every left-wing, radical, violent terrorist group in the Western Hemisphere has at some point relied on support from Cuba. the ELN, the FARC dissidents, including them, have been involved there. We also know, for example, that Cuba continues to host a pretty substantial collection, intelligence sites on behalf of the Chinese and the Russians. But you look at the region and you look at all of these leftist, Marxist, terrorist organizations, all of them, in many cases,
Mr.
got their
Secretary,
seed money
if I
from
can
the
move on.
Cubans.
I noticed you did not answer my question because my question specifically related to whether there was new evidence to support that conclusion. I can just tell you.
Why would I need new evidence?
Because you're claiming that they're a state-sponsored terrorism, suggesting they're ongoingly involved in that. My final question to you, Mr. Secretary, relates to the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex. There have been reports that the United States is working with Israel to take away the Kingdom of Jordan's custodianship over the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex in East Jerusalem. Can you confirm today that there's no?
I'm not even aware of those reports.
There are reports, so I was hoping you could confirm.
Is that like a media report or?
There have been several media reports.
Well, you know the media is always accurate.
No, they're not, and that's why I'm getting.
Yeah, no, I've never even heard
So
that.
if
That's
you
the
could
first
just-
time I even hear anybody discuss that.
All right, well, I'm glad to hear that, Mr.
But we have a great relationship with Jordan, you know, we're very helpful. So I've just never heard that before. You should, I don't know what article you're referring to, just give it to me, I'll look at it.
I'm happy to.
Is it a credible website or?
I'm glad to hear you say, Mr. Secretary, there's no truth.
I've never heard that discussed by
Thank you.
anybody.
Thank you much. Senator Paul, you're up next. Oops, I'm sorry. Senator Daines was here earlier. I apologize, Senator. Senator Daines.
That was crazy, by the way. I was listening to that. That was wild. What a crazy person. Not even worth it for me to comment on what he was saying. That Democrat.
Chairman, thank you. Ranking Member Shaheen, good to see you as well. One of the underreported successes for your diplomacy and this administration is what's happened to the peace agreement, a landmark agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I know, Mr. Secretary, you just were in the region most recently. A major step forward for a region long beset by conflict, nearly 40 years of a hot war.
Okay.
And through your leadership.
I wonder, he might say something about Iran, but let's just go to Secretary Rubio's response.
We signed the trip agreement between the U.S. and Armenia, and this is, you described it as a corridor, which I know it's the anchor of a peace agreement with Armenia and Azerbaijan, and that's critical, but it's much more than just the anchor of a peace agreement. It really has the opportunity to revolutionize Armenia's strategic location and become a central hub for trade in the region. It solves the issue of access that Azerbaijan cared about, and it was an irritant in their relationship, but it does much more than that. It has the ability to transform the Armenian economy in a very powerful way. Here's the other thing that it's done. You know, for a long period of time, our relations with Armenia were quite stagnant, and in many cases, I would argue, almost non-existent. It has also reinvigorated that relationship between our two countries and allow us to explore opportunities in all sorts of other fields. So we're involved in that very heavily now. We literally just signed the agreement, and it will allow us to drive and hopefully incentivize U.S. private sector investment in this corridor to the benefit of American companies and American interests, but also to the benefit of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and other regional countries. I would also argue, by the way, and just to point out, and I don't mean this again, I think this is pretty well understood in the open source reporting, the Russians are less than happy about our engagement there. I think there's evidence that they would like the current president to lose his election as a result of this growing relationship with the United States. To be clear, we're not there to infringe on Armenian sovereignty. We're not asking them not to be friends with other countries. We just want to be able to have a relationship with them that's built not just on peace. Peace is important, but that's just the beginning. It's the economic opportunities that it provides. There are American companies and American workers that will benefit from it, but the Armenian people will be the ultimate beneficiaries of this corridor opening.
Just remarkable. And we were there together, in fact, last August at the White House when President Aliyev of Azerbaijan, Prime Minister Pashinyan of Armenia came to sign that agreement with President Trump's leadership. To think a Shiite Muslim country, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, one of the oldest Christian countries in the world, came together to sign a peace agreement was truly a breakthrough. And so it's an underreported story, in my opinion, Mr. Secretary. I think we need to get the story out. This is a critical geopolitical problem that has been definitely remedied by the leadership of this.
Yeah, I mean, the key, Senator Daines, is going to be execution. Like, you can sign an agreement, you can have the things in place. We now have to make sure we are focused on driving it and ensuring that to the extent American companies can contribute to the infrastructure, to the railway, to the highway, to everything that needs to happen in order for that corridor to open. And then the spin-off effect of it as well. We don't need to dominate it. We're not asking for an American monopoly economic, but we do want our companies to get a fair shake in there. And by the way, partnering with Armenian companies in many cases, so it becomes mutually beneficial.
Secretary Rubio, before my time runs out, I want to bring up one very important final point. As you well know, I've been spending a lot of time over the past few years working with our friends in Central Asia, across the Caspian there, with the 5 Central Asian countries. Things are progressing well thanks to your engagement and encouragement and President Trump's. And we're seeing a lot of fruit from last year's C5+1 summit that was right here in Washington. That being said,
Okay, so this isn't about
there is still a major
Iran.
hurdle to strengthen our ties. One of the key irritants
All
to our and
Let's go to the next.
and our encouragement from our friends.
Absolutely.
The secretary and Senator Daines with you, and I've talked to the president about this, as you know, and I have actually talked to the chairman of the finance committee, who I know relatively well, and we actually have a plan for going forward. You and I are going to meet on that here pretty quickly.
I'm glad I have friends in high places, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
But no, you're absolutely right on that. It's just in the queue. So with that, let us go to Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, Mr. Secretary, National Security Advisor. Good to see you again. I know from our service here together that you agree that China is the greatest national security threat that we face. And one of the key reasons is their repeated threats to take control of Taiwan by force if necessary. And Taiwan, as we both know, is not just some faraway island. It produces 90% of the semiconductor chips critical to everything from F-35s to iPhones. And its geography makes it indispensable, both to global commerce and military power. Do you agree with that?
To Taiwan? Yeah, it's not just strategically important in terms of where it's located. It also is the message that it sends to the world if something were to happen to it.
Agreed. That's why for decades, really with leadership from the Senate in a bipartisan way, we've provided arms to deter the PRC's potential military aggression. In fact, you introduced the Taiwan Peace Through Strength Act of 2023. In January, Congress pre-approved a $14 billion arms package for Taiwan. It's been 6 months. We haven't received a notification. Have you advised President Trump to proceed with this?
Yeah, it's under, but I don't know if you were here a moment ago when I discussed, we just did 11 billion in December, which was, I think, the largest sale in history. It's certainly, I think it was more than the cumulative amount under the Biden administration. And I recall during 6 years of the Obama administration, there was zero gone to Taiwan. So some way you would argue that we're trying to make up ground.
So why hold off on it now?
Well, so the other 14 is being reviewed. It's under review. It hasn't been, I think it's been noticed, but it hasn't been reviewed. I mean, it hasn't been approved yet.
So
It's
here's
under
my
review under the
concern.
White House.
Mr.
But
Secretary, my concern is that President Trump has said publicly that arms sales to Taipei are a great negotiating chip with China. And my concern at a time when the PRC engaged war arms.
it's words in a meeting, and suffice it to say that, you know, that specific question you just asked, that's not the context in which the president has raised this in the past. When the president says it's a great negotiating thing, what he's really saying is it's because China, as you can imagine, always mentions this. Like, this is a top priority for them. They are constantly talking about Taiwan arms sales, but that in no way is what is holding up our decision-making or the White House's decision-making. It is something the president will have to decide on the timing of when and how that is executed on. It's been approved by Congress. It's been noticed. The money's available. And as I said, we are just coming off the heels of a very large sale in December of last year. So there are a variety of reasons why these things don't happen immediately.
Well, I'll just assert, Mr. Secretary, that there is more reason than ever for the administration with congressional support to continue providing robust military capacity to Taiwan, given that the PRC is more and more regionally aggressive. You also introduced and passed legislation in 23 prohibiting any president from unilaterally withdrawing from NATO. I assume this was because you recognize that our alliances are a key advantage against Russia, against China, against other adversaries. Do you still consider Article 5 an unconditional commitment?
Yeah, so let me address that holistically, if it's okay, because I think we have time to do it. First of all, you're right. I have throughout my entire career in the Senate and through much of my time now in this administration been a supporter of NATO. I see its utility. The key, and I'm just being honest with you when we talk about this, one of the key arguments that I would always use on behalf of NATO, and it links back, we are living denying and years of that.
Is it not true that some of the challenges in our NATO relations have, I think he publicly said both.
Tell you asked whether we should be in NATO. In I 19, you were asked my point.
Members a year and a half. And there is talk of sending them either back to Afghanistan into the waiting arms of these are risks. Can you commit to working with me and others in this body to support the relocation of these vetted individuals to the United States, especially those who are family members of currently serving U.S. soldiers?
Yeah, I can't. First of all, as you know, we're under an executive order now after the National Guard attack here, and so that happened last year. So we can't admit any Afghans at this point into the country. That said, you just pointed to them being sent back to Afghanistan. Our goal, we've worked on this, and we'll work with you on it, is we have talked to multiple countries. Now, I don't know of any single country that's going to take 1,000 people, but we've talked to multiple countries about taking several hundred of these people and allowing them to move to a safe location. As you know, we are operating under not just those restrictions, but broader restrictions about immigration into the United States after 25 million people entered this country illegally over a 4-year period leading up to this administration.
The president just
but I'll work with you to find the right places for them to go. We want that to happen.
The president just raised the refugee cap exclusively to allow Afrikaners into for the highest case family.
Senator Paul.
I'd like to revisit for a moment the boats that were blowing up in the Caribbean and the Pacific that referred to as drug boats.
Okay, so let's go
people.
Sorry, because we're just focusing on Iran here.
If you just have them on the book, then I think they're of little value in changing behavior. Thank you.
Senator Booker.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, you and I talked a lot about Africa, and I raised concerns about a lot of the cuts. We're seeing globally an increase in tuberculosis, an increase in malaria cases. We see a continued ongoing on the continent HIV crisis, and the United States has pulled back from a lot of its investments in those areas. Now with the crisis with Ebola, we see the challenges that have been brought about as a result of our surveillance, early detection, and the like. So I'm just very concerned about what the administration's strategy is, because we're clearly seeing here that what goes on in the we made those cuts.
Like, are people in like third world countries voting for you? Like, I don't understand. Who is your voter base here?
That we cut early detection.
Who is your voter base, buddy? I don't know. Maybe those countries themselves should like invest in Ebola early detection instead of like, I don't know, not being corrupt.
Yeah. Hold on. And that was the exact deal that you guys vilified, that the president and you vilified President Obama.
Wait, what's going on now?
Nuclear program.
Okay, now he's going to, oh wow, of course.
So let's move on. My time is limited.
I know, but that's an important question. I don't want to eat up your time, but I need to answer that because I just don't agree with that.
Mr. Secretary, you can't even agree on the facts.
Because they're not accurate.
Wait, what?
About a lot of the cuts. We're seeing globally an increase in tuberculosis, an increase in malaria cases. We see a continued ongoing on the continent HIV crisis. And the United States has pulled back from a lot of its investments in those areas. Now with the crisis with Ebola, we see the challenges that have been brought about as a result of our surveillance, early detection, and the like. So I'm just very concerned about what the administration's strategy is, because we're clearly seeing here.
It's not just how much money you split was for that big.
Early connecting the two. Really like to actually have my questions answered. So very quickly, we cut early detection when it comes to infectious diseases on the continent. Factually, this is not an opinion.
Well, why is it the responsibility of the United States?
Warning. So I don't see these crisis anywhere is a threat to public health everywhere. The United States has made major reductions in these areas. Other cuts we've made, State Department personnel that I've talked to are saying we're less prepared for a global outbreak than we were before. That's into the kind of things that can prevent, have us more prepared. My time is limited.
I know, but that's an important question. I don't want to eat up your time, but I need to answer that.
I think it gets to Iran here.
Mr. Secretary, you can't even agree on the facts.
Because that's not accurate. I mean, again, you look at what we've entered into.
It's not accurate that we cut early detection.
Because those have all been repurposed and different arrangements that we now have with these countries. As an example, when
I would like, for the record, because we're not going to cover it in my short time, if you're telling me we are as prepared or more prepared before the Trump administration came in, I'd like to see the facts.
I think when these reforms are finalized, which we're on the verge of doing, we're actually going to be better prepared. We are responding today faster, not just to humanitarian crisis, but to outbreaks than we were before. We are responding in some cases within 72 hours, are able to move funds to task. which you weren't able to do in the old system. And we're also building the capacity of
Mr.
these
Secretary,
nation states through
Mr.
these
Secretary,
compacts.
may I please reclaim my time to shift gears? The Strait of Hormuz, I was listening to their conversations you had with some of my colleagues. We've now seen the Strait closed for months, and you explained that we're going to see an opening of the Strait, and ultimately the exchange we will get for that is after that fact, we will release certain sanctions. Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said. What I said was that if they open the straits.
Wow, so this guy just claimed he was listening. If you were listening, Marco Rubio already answered this question. He said, no, we're not going to release sanctions just for reopening the strait. You have to meet all the conditions. Like, reopening the strait is one of 5 conditions. Wow, these people are not very intelligent.
We will lift our blockade. The straits and the blockade are what are interrelated.
And so for the nuclear program, in exchange for getting rid of the fissile material out of country, I imagine, is what the highly enriched uranium, we would release sanctions. Is that correct?
Well, it's not just that. It's also their enrichment activity. They would have to, they would have to make very severe and significant concessions on what they intend to enrich.
And already with the March relaxing of sanctions, allowing Iranians to sell oil to the Chinese, estimates have been between $10 and $50 billion they got from that relaxing of sanctions. How much money might we see in a deal in a relaxed?
So the Islamic regime didn't actually get the money. Scott Bessent was very clear. The money, the funds acquired from those sales are currently being held in an account somewhere. They're frozen by the United States. The Islamic regime has no access to them. And Scott Bessent clearly said those funds are going to remain there and they will be released when all this is over, because the money belongs to the Iranian people. That's what he said. So China got their oil, but the Islamic regime didn't actually get the money because the US was doing sort of the United States was the intermediary. Like, you idiot.
Of sanctions in order to get rid of the highly enriched uranium and stop their enrichment.
Well, let me just tell you on that portion, the sanctions that were released on Iran were boats on the water. And so that oil was already out in the marketplace. It was sold at market rates, but the sanctions covered, and to the extent we've been able to enforce them, we have the revenues of those sales. So yeah, the Iranian oil was unsanctioned so that it could be sold. The revenue would have to flow back to blocked accounts, which our sanctions were able to go after. We've also
See, I literally just said that. So yeah, the oil was sold, but the money did not go to the Islamic regime. The money is being blocked. It's being held in trust by the United States and will be released when Iran is free and the Islamic regime has been overthrown. Like, I literally just said that. Like, how is it that I know more about U.S. policy than the Democrats, and I'm not even American?
seized, I believe, 6 vessels in the Indo-Pacific that involved Iranian sanctioned oil on top of it. So that wasn't necessarily a trade. They didn't get $50 billion directly as a result of. They might have gotten some of it. They certainly didn't get the majority of it. They are now losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day in revenue because of the blockade. And the blockade exists because of what they're doing in the Straits.
Right. And I guess the conclusion I have, and my time's expired, is that
thank God
the Strait of Hormuz was open before this unjustified war. We're now scrambling to try to find a way to get it back opened again. Not only is it causing economic havoc to our country and to residents all around this nation, families trying to make ends meet.
How is it causing economic havoc to the United States? You guys don't even rely on
finding ways to leverage that, as we allowed them to do with the Chinese for tens of billions of dollars.
Wow.
And so my point is, before we even get to a nuclear negotiation, this regime is getting money to rebuild, purchase more drones, cause more havoc.
No.
And this is before we're even trying to get back to.
But I apologize. I don't understand how they're getting this. What revenue are you referring to?
Well, there's 2 sources of revenue we're seeing. One is the revenue from the Chinese, that's factually documented. And number 2, the revenue that you're proposing that they should receive by releasing all of their highly enriched uranium, as well as in making a commitment about their enrichment capacities.
Yeah.
Hold on. And that was the exact deal that you guys vilified, that the president and you vilified President Obama from having.
Here
we have a worse situation where our adversary and our enemy, who's causing havoc in the region, who is funding proxies and terrorists, has discovered, thanks to you all, the power of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz.
No, they didn't
which
discover.
is
They
all-
knew that a long time ago, and they've done it before.
Clearly, we all knew that a long time ago. That's why this
And they intended to do this at
ill-conceived
some point
war
in the
should have
future
never
as well.
happened.
Yeah,
You have
but
made our adversary in a stronger negotiating position. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and we're in a stalemate with Iran. And now we're begging to get back into a deal that you all
We're not
trashed in
begging.
the first place.
There's no one begging. I don't
Clearly,
know.
this is a
Senator
shame-
Booker, your time's up.
But can
Senator
I just-
Rubio, since he's
I do
gone
want to
over, you
address
can
some of these points
respond.
because they go to the heart of the matter. No one's begging for anything here. The Iranians might be begging because their economy is losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day. That they are losing. Understand, Iran had street protests going on before all of this started. All of those factors, economic factors in Iran, are far worse today than they were 6 months ago when those protests were happening. They have hyperinflation. Their currency is completely devalued. They're struggling to make payroll for their government workers. Iran is in a very serious situation. And if it was up to the political class there, and I understand everybody there is sort of radical in some way, but if it was up to the people that actually like go to elections and wear the suits and you see on TV, they'd probably make a deal tomorrow. It's the issue they're facing is that the supreme leader and the IRGC Corps are a little bit more immune from those pressures until they can be convinced otherwise. And I think that's the direction that they're moving in, because the reality, I don't know where you're getting this perception that Iran is stronger. Iran has no navy left. They've lost a substantial percentage of their defense industrial base. That Iran has lost a substantial percentage of their missile launchers, and their economy is far worse today, and I mean far worse today than it was 6 to 9 months ago. And they are looking at hundreds of billions of dollars of reconstruction costs just to get to where they were 6
Mr.
months
Rubio,
ago.
you keep telling us how we're winning this war. The president keeps saying,
Well, the war's over
completely
now.
annihilated. The war is not over. And yet the American people see how we're losing at the pump and with their costs. And yet this thing still hasn't been resolved. Every day he tweets out, oh, we've obliterated them. We've annihilated them. They're going to surrender. But yet we still find ourselves spending billions of dollars a week
Yeah, Senator
on a war
Booker,
abroad.
you've gone way over. And
It would be nice if we had hearings where people.
Thank
had to
you,
be held
Senator
accountable.
Booker. Senator Scott.
All right. Secretary Rubio. So first off, do you think it's important to Americans that the Iranian regime doesn't have nuclear weapons and ability to destroy?
I think it's important to the world.
I agree.
The whole world. I mean, this question about the Straits is a great example. Imagine, the Straits gives them leverage. Imagine what nuclear weapons would give them leverage to do. At that point, they wouldn't even have to announce that we're controlling this. They would just say, we control the Straits. There's nothing you can do about it because our nuclear weapon will allow us to do it. You will have to pay us a toll for using an international waterway from now on, and you can't do anything to us militarily because we'll blow you up with a nuclear weapon. That is the leverage that they were trying to build. If they ever got a nuclear weapon, not only would they have a nuclear weapon, not only would they control the Straits, they would be able to act with impunity because you wouldn't be able to touch them. You wouldn't be able to do anything about them.
I want to thank you for what you're doing. Let's talk about Latin America, which is, as you know, important to a lot of people in our state. So thanks for what you've done.
So we'll move forward. We'll go forward because Latin America is not a part of it. Okay.
In 2013, in response to a question from the now chairman of SASC, General Mattis pointed out that if you don't find, and I quote him, if you don't fund the State Department fully, then I need to buy more ammunition ultimately, end quote. Unfortunately, despite his service in the first Trump administration, the second time around, you seem to have taken the message as a blueprint rather than as a warning. The budget that you're presenting today cuts the State Department by about 1/3 after you previously tried to enact steep cuts and eliminations last year.
Yeah, it's probably just getting rid of like duplication and mismanagement and waste. Good for him. Good for you.
If not more money in Iran than he thinks.
Okay, there we go. Now, of course, the Democrats getting to Iran.
Over some you would
costs.
Look at her struggling. Look at her struggling to find her question. She literally doesn't even know what she wants to talk about. Like she's scanning through her paper and like, like wait, what? So, guys, I'm not going to 2C because I'm doing a stream on the Senate committee hearing, and it's uninterrupted. This is not Iran Revolution Live. If you guys want to watch 2C, you're more than welcome to go tune into 2C. Yeah, like I support him, but I'm doing like an uninterrupted documentary watch party and political analysis of the committee hearing. But yeah, guys, listen to her. So she's just like like she doesn't even know what she wants to ask about. Like this is, look at her.
The thing that I look at.
I would think you would have some some insight because you are our national security.
Well, I've
advisor
seen the
also.
testimony that Secretary Hegseth and others have conducted in front of their oversight committees, but I just can't, I don't want to give you an answer that's not accurate.
Okay.
so.
Well, this week, let me put out some numbers that I have. This week, the cost of President Trump's illegal war of choice against Iran are likely to balloon
Illegal
past
war.
$35 billion by the rate from DOD's own May calculations and surpass your FY 2027 budget request of $35.1 billion for the State Department and related programs. That's an astonishing figure, worth repeating. In just 14 weeks, President Trump will have blown through as much, if not more money in Iran than he thinks Congress should spend on U.S. diplomacy for the entirety of the next fiscal year. This administration's distorted priorities have unfortunately revealed some stark lessons.
Okay, just a quick update. So there are explosions being reported in Bahrain, Iraq, and Kuwait. So yeah. The Islamic regime has launched missiles at Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq. And there is an update from CENTCOM. I'll read this really quickly, but I really just want to watch this Senate committee hearing. Okay, so CENTCOM just put out 7 minutes ago. Oh wait, my browser lost access to audio. Just give me a moment, guys. Let me reconnect my browser here. Quick intermission to talk about the boom booms happening by the Islamic regime terrorists, which, makes these Democrats look even dumber. All right, so CENTCOM just posted 7 minutes ago. U.S. partner forces defend against aggressive Iranian behavior. They mean the Islamic regime. I hate it when they say Iranian. But anyways, U.S. partner forces defend against aggressive Islamic regime behavior. U.S. forces successfully defeated multiple Iranian ballistic missiles and drones and conducted self-defense strikes on Qishm Island in response to attempted attacks by Iran across the Middle East June 2nd. Iran launched several ballistic missiles toward regional neighbors. However, all failed to hit their intended targets. 2 Iranian missiles fired at Kuwait fell short or broke apart en route, and 3 missiles launched at Bahrain were immediately intercepted by the United States and Bahrain Air Defense Forces. Moments earlier, U.S. Central Command forces shot down 3 one-way attack drones launched by Iran towards civilian mariners that were rightfully transiting regional waters. American forces also conducted self-defense strikes on an Iranian military ground control station on Qishm Island. No U.S. personnel were harmed. CENTCOM forces remain vigilant and ready to defend against unwarranted Iranian aggression during the ongoing ceasefire. What a strange sentence. Guys, what a very strange sentence. CENTCOM forces remain vigilant and ready to defend against unwarranted Iranian aggression during the ongoing ceasefire. Literally the least ceasefire that has ever existed. Let's see what happens in the future. But guys, that's pretty much the breaking news. That's pretty much it. So there were boom booms, there were attempted attacks. Obviously, the United States stopped it all because the United States military is, the most powerful military in the world. And that just makes this Democrat look even dumber now.
For our allies and partners as well. The United States use of force first will make them less secure as they'll be caught in the crossfire, left scrambling to protect themselves and their people. Mr. Secretary, do you agree?
No, the United States literally just defended all 3 countries.
That under Operation Epic Fury, our allies and partners in the region have expressed concern about their security and the threats that followed from this administration's uncoordinated actions.
No, I think our allies in the region have been very cooperative. Some obviously very aggressively cooperative, like the UAE as an example. Kuwait's been fantastic. Obviously, no country likes to have their oil and their energy infrastructure hit, but I think it's a reminder to them of the threat that Iran poses. And the one lesson when this is all said and done is it's reminded them of, despite all the friendly talk that you've seen in the past, how dangerous Iran is to their own interests, how the billions of dollars Iran has spent, despite sanctions. Iran found the money to build drones and rockets. Okay. And luckily, we've taken a lot of them out, but they still have some, and they still have the ability to launch.
My question is about our allies in the region expressing concerns, because you see, public reporting in early May revealed that Saudi Arabia denied U.S. basing and overflight related to Trump's ill-conceived plan to escort ships through the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia also refused to give the United States oil in the 1973 Arab oil embargo. Are you going to blame that on President Trump as well, you fool? Saudi Arabia denied permission because Saudi Arabia is not your ally. That's why.
And they're still not supportive of this risky tanker escort plan. And the Strait is still worse off today than it was before Trump initiated this war. And that doesn't even touch on
we don't
like imagine using Saudi Arabia as the moral compass. Really like you're using Saudi Arabia as the moral compass in the Middle East. Wild. These people are insane. I bet you she probably can't even point out Saudi Arabia on a map. She probably doesn't even know what the capital of Saudi Arabia is.
wider global lessons being learned by our allies and partners.
Yeah, we don't face
home
any
from the Shangri-La dialogue, where I heard from folks across the Indo-Pacific and especially in Southeast Asia, who are being hit hard by the same rising energy costs that are devastating American communities.
Honest, she doesn't even know what she's talking about right now. She's literally just reading a piece of paper that like her staffer just prepared for her, probably using ChatGPT.
And frankly, this administration insists on using military force as a first resort instead of a last resort, no matter the deadly cost of self-defeating impacts. Your budget request here would sadly perpetuate that trend and undermine the roles and responsibilities that you should be fulfilling as Secretary of State.
I don't even know what
Thank
she's
you, Mr.
asking.
Chairman. I yield back.
Okay, I didn't
What
get
is
to
she
answer
even
any of that.
asking?
I didn't ask the question.
Well, she didn't answer the question.
Oh wow! So no wonder I'm confused. I'm like, what is she even asking? Obviously, she didn't even ask a question. It was basically just like democratic like word vomit, right? Like that's basically what it was.
You just want me to answer? Can I answer anyway?
You may.
Okay. Well, but she made a bunch of points. I get to answer them, right? First of all, I don't understand this thing with let me tell you, we were just here, maybe you weren't here, we were just talking about it. We did a peace deal with Azerbaijan and Armenia. We just signed the trip agreement yesterday, actually, or last week we signed it. Last night I officialized it. That was diplomacy.
That's great, but the Trump administration is still
Don't
blowing
interrupt him. You have your time to
this
talk.
entire budget. that
Senator
you're
Don't
Duckworth,
interrupt him.
Senator Duckworth, I'm going to let Senator Rubio reply to the statements that you made at his request.
Yeah, that's.
But we've got a hard stop at 12:30.
Okay, but I know, but she said a lot of stuff. I get to answer some of it. All right. So the first is the second is India-Pakistan. We ended that war. We were involved in helping broker that. Thailand, Cambodia. That's diplomacy. We've been very engaged in fact, as I sit here now speaking to you, I've got the Lebanese government and the Israeli government meeting at the State Department starting at 8:30 this morning for the fourth time after engaging last week at the military level. So we're carrying out now, we're carrying out diplomacy all over the world constantly and very successfully in many cases. Now, let me make one more point that you raised about the budget request. Guys, we understand how this process works, okay? You guys understand. I know because I've been involved all the time. We OMB produces sort of timelines for every agency. We put forward a budget. We say, this is the money we've been allocated. This is how we would spend it. There is a congressional process, which I'm sure you're aware of. And in my time here, 16 years that I was here, I don't ever recall us once ever taking the president's budget and passing it into law. I'm not walking away from the budget. We can make it work if that's the budget you give us. But I have a sense, I have a suspicion, right, Senator Schatz, that we're going to have to work with you guys, that we're going to have to, that we're going to have to work with you guys on a budget request that meets your priorities and ours. That's how it works. You guys are the appropriators. We have to work within we will tell you what we care about. We will tell you how we're going to spend the money, but ultimately you will provide us a spending bill and we will work through those parameters. But we have given you what we can live with. We can make it work. But if you want to, if you're obviously going to have changes here in Congress, but this stuff about diplomacy and the money spent on the war, diplomacy's always cost less money. We don't buy missiles. We don't buy rockets. We don't buy large airplanes and aircraft carriers, but we've been very effective. And I can give you list after list of places where we have had an impact in either de-escalating crisis before it started or ending active wars. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done in that regard, some of which haven't even been publicly discussed in some cases because they weren't high profile. And my last point, we remain heavily engaged in areas that may not at the core of our national interests, but nonetheless are related to our national interests. You think about Sudan for a moment and the Quad. This has been a very frustrating situation to put together, but we helped convene a donor conference that got pledges for when that is resolved. We've put a lot of time and energy in a situation that right now, unfortunately, has turned into a proxy in the Middle East because of the UAE and the Saudis on opposite sides of it. In Libya, where our work in Libya now it's still divided, but they, for the first time ever, have a joint budget. For the first time ever, are cooperating on energy deals that are going to be beneficial to the people of Libya. So I just don't think it's fair to say we're not actively involved in diplomacy on last year's budget and spending, because we are, and we have been, and to great success.
Thank you. Senator Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clock setter, thank you for resetting the clock. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. And I'm always truly impressed with your ability to navigate around the globe so articulately and explain the positions. Like you previously, I chair the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee. One of the focuses that I've had is on Taiwan. The subcommittee here, Honduras switches from certain presidentship dollars and Holland. I counter kicks for Taiwan.
Switch recognition, even all of these laser trade be go up with lower cost, a financing mechanism.
Where a lot of the state language training takes place with
in an important part of the world. And so I think we want to see a language proficiency. That's the
Okay, now we're going to another Democrat.
And the suffering of Palestinian civilians.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, go after, like, blame Hamas for that, you fool.
We don't have the answer because there's not US dollars that have flowed. These are donor funds.
So can you tell me how much money is in the JP Morgan account?
Okay, what's all this?
And it's going to be lean about how many full-time personnel do you expect?
Organization.
You've terminated dozens of awards supporting women and girls. You shuttered the Office of Global Women's Issues.
Yeah, global women's issues? What is...
You've terminated dozens.
What has the Office of, what has the Office of Global Women's Issues ever accomplished for the women of Iran who, for the last 47 years, Iranian women have been raped before they're executed because the Islamic regime wants to make sure that in their disgusting religious ideology, their souls don't go to heaven because they believe virgins go to heaven. So Iranian women are raped before they're hanged by a crane. What has the Global Women's Issues Office done for that? Guys, all of these global organizations, it's all fake. It's all a fraud, right? The United Nations is the biggest joke. The United Nations should be disbanded. It's literally a garbage organization at this point, okay? United Nations has done absolutely nothing for the Iranian people. In fact, the United Nations defends the Islamic regime. So shame on you for this Global Women's Office bullshit, nonsense, right? It's utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, we'll follow up and I'll give you the right people.
Whatever.
Vice President in the negotiations. Even Iran's foreign minister.
Oh, now she's going to Iran.
And Jared Kushner, both of whom were never confirmed by this body to be America's diplomats.
They don't have to be confirmed. If the president wants them to be part of the negotiations, the president has the right to do that.
The vice president in the negotiations. Even Iran's foreign minister was not there, yet you were.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Was there, excuse me, and you were not. I just feel that's embarrassing for us and it's embarrassing for you. So, Mr. Secretary, Congress represents the American people. We have the power to confirm who represents America abroad. We confirmed you to be our Secretary of State. We confirmed you to be in the negotiations that are happening. And it's just unthinkable to me that you are missing high stakes negotiations or that you're not involved.
He's not. President Trump literally said that Marco Rubio is working on the Iran file behind the scenes.
It's sad.
Senator Rosen, your time's up. But
So let me
Secretary Rubio.
You're 100% inaccurate and 100% wrong. Here's why. Number one, the Vice President of the United States was there, and he wasn't confirmed by us, and he was elected by the American people. Okay, he is the second in line of the presidency of the United States. He was present. Mr. Witkoff is the president's envoy for negotiation for peace deals. Mr. Kushner is a private citizen that serves as an advisor on these functions. They were the team that we sent to Pakistan. I was not at a party. Where I was is next to the president. Because in the midst of those negotiations, I was in communications with them. And in fact, I think there is media reporting from that evening on how on multiple occasions I went into a back room, I came back out and spoke to the president and was constantly updating him. On that evening, I spoke to Mr. Kushner and our negotiating team and Mr. Witkoff on at least 6 occasions, including twice on a secure line from the phone they had access to over there. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're just
Senator
making
Rosen,
stuff up.
he has the floor.
I know your
please.
staff wrote up this cute statement for your TikTok video, but it's not true and it's not real. That's not what happened. Okay, I'm the National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. I was co-located with the president in the midst of a high-stakes negotiation so that I could immediately inform him about events occurring halfway around the world. I was where I needed to be at that moment because we had a very capable team on the ground in Pakistan, led by the Vice President of the United States.
Thank you.
Guys, I literally told you earlier. Like, all of these statements, it's basically just their staffers just writing whatever nonsense statements for like their gotcha moment so that they can use it for the upcoming midterms or, you know, as part of their re-election campaign, right? Like everyone knows that. So Marco Rubio just called it out as well, right? So see, guys, I'm giving you, trust in me. I will give you the insider info when it comes to how these politicians operate and think and why they say and do certain things. I got you. I will translate political speak to English.
Cornyn.
Secretary Rubio, I've heard some of my colleagues here on this committee suggest that the U.S. started a war with the Iranian regime 92 days ago. I happen to believe that the Iranian regime started a war against the West and Israel and has been at war with us since 1979.
Yes, I agree. 100%.
Well, if you go back to 1979 and the taking hostages and build it out from there, I don't know the numbers. If we could even add them up, it's incalculable. Thousands of people around the world, including many Americans, have been killed because of direct Iranian action. All the IEDs, those roadside bombs that maimed and killed our soldiers, were all the mastermind work of the IRGC for decades. The IRGC sponsors terrorist attacks all over the planet. In fact, they were involved, for example, in the bombing of a Jewish center in Argentina in 1993 or 1994. They're consistently, we have people convicted in the United States of America, and one was arrested yesterday, Iranian agents plotting the assassination of American political leaders, including the President of the United States.
To be fair, they were not actually Iranian agents. They were agents of the Islamic regime, and they were like Pakistani.
They've been waging nonstop, not to mention their massive sponsorship of Hamas, of Hezbollah, and all the activities those groups have undertaken. So you're absolutely right that the Iranian system has been waging war on the West. But why is anybody in the United States in specific for over 3 decades? But why is anyone surprised? They openly chant death to America, death to Israel. They openly say Israel's the little Satan, but we're the big Satan. So I think at some point when people say this repeatedly, you believe their rhetoric and their actions back their rhetoric. This is a very dangerous regime. And the notion that they would ever possess nuclear weapons.
So when it comes to the assassination attempt of Ivanka Trump, that was also an Islamic regime agent. He is from Iraq. So he's an Iraqi terrorist, a Muslim Iraqi terrorist who's part of the terrorist group Hashd al-Shabi, who was planning on assassinating Ivanka Trump. So again, not Iranian. That's why when you say Iranian agent, it doesn't actually mean anything because first of all, they're not Iranian. Second of all, they don't represent Iran. They represent the Islamic regime, which is occupying Iran. And they're not even ethnically Iranian. Like some of them were from Pakistan. And then that other dude that wanted to assassinate Ivanka Trump is from Iraq.
People that are willing to conduct those kinds of terrorist acts, whatever possess a nuclear weapon, is unthinkable, unbearable, and unacceptable. And it's not going to happen under President Trump.
So ever since since the Iranian nuclear program started, and they basically blocked the IAEA and others from doing the inspections that would be required in order to monitor their use of enriched uranium. We've had presidents, Democrat and Republican, say that a Iranian nuclear weapon was unacceptable, but it took President Trump to actually do something about it. It shocks me to hear some of our colleagues suggest that there was not an imminent threat from an Iranian nuclear weapon. You and I both sat in the same skiff on the Senate Intelligence Committee. We won't talk about the details, of course, but we knew that they continued to enrich to the point where they could produce a nuclear weapon within a specified time. There's some debate about how long that breakout would take, but the idea that an Iranian nuclear program did not present an imminent threat to the United States, to me, is just ludicrous. And I think it defies all evidence to the contrary. But do you think if they had acquired a nuclear weapon, that that would change the ability of the United States and our allies like Israel to deal with this nuclear-armed Iran?
I think if Iran ever acquired a nuclear weapon, they could very well use it, because given the theological nature of their decision making.
Yep.
But just as problematic is they would have immunity. At that point, your options on what you could do about them would be quite limited, and their ability to hold the world hostage.
They'd be like North Korea, for example.
They'd be
Even
North
worse.
Korea, but worse. They'd be better funded. They would at that point decide that they own the Straits of Hormuz.
So the difference between North Korea and the Islamic regime is that North Korea is just focused inward. The Islamic regime, it's like a revolutionary thing. So for them, the revolution didn't end in 1979. 1979 is the beginning of their Islamic revolution, because they're engaging in jihad against the rest of the world, and they literally want to like take over the world. That's why they're like colonizing all these countries, right? And sending their terrorists to the United States and other Western countries.
Forever, and everyone has to pay them a toll. And nuclear weapons, you can't do anything about it. They would be able to act with them.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like if they acquired nuclear weapons, then goodbye to like cheap gas prices in the Strait of Hormuz, right? Because once they have a nuclear weapon, they can do whatever they want, and you can't stop them anymore.
At that point, your options on what you could do about them would be quite limited, and their ability to hold the world hostage.
They'd be like North Korea, for example.
They'd be North Korea, but worse. They'd be better funded. They would at that point decide that they own the Straits of Hormuz forever, and everyone has to pay them a toll. And nuclear weapons, you can't do anything about it. They would be able to act with impunity. They would sponsor Hezbollah. They would sponsor Hamas. They would hyper scale their efforts of global terrorism and completely try to drive us out of the region and ultimately destroy the state of Israel. That's what their goal would be, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it because they have a nuclear weapon and would threaten to blow people up if you tried to move against them.
Notwithstanding the importance of denying Iran a nuclear weapon, I do applaud the president's attempt to try to use some diplomacy here in order to deny them access to the enriched uranium and their other weapons that they use against Israel and the West. But tell me, why do you think anything that the Iranian regime agrees to that they will comply with? What evidence is there that they will agree to anything that they ultimately will stick with?
Well, again, and that's why any deal with them you have to enter into it with clearly verifiable steps. So as an example, simply putting something on a piece of paper is not satisfactory. You have to actually commit to doing it, then you have to actually do it. And so that's our view of it. Our view of it is that any concessions that are made, and I don't even call them concessions per se, but any arrangements that are made with Iran have to come after not just they agree to certain things, but they actually do certain things. And let's be clear about this, because I don't think this is talked about enough. If what Iran wants is nuclear energy for their country, there are mechanisms to do it. There are countries all over the world that have nuclear energy, but they don't enrich. They certainly don't enrich the 60%.
Yeah, they also don't build secret underground nuclear facilities in mountains, right? Like regular normal countries who have good intentions with their nuclear program don't build secret nuclear bunkers under mountains, okay?
They don't do it hidden in a mountain,
Oh my gosh!
buried underground somewhere.
I literally just said, oh my gosh, I literally just said that. Wow. See guys? It's like I know what he's going to say.
If what they want is nuclear energy, they can have it. There are mechanisms for them. The problem with Iran is not that they want nuclear energy. The problem with Iran is that everything they do is consistent with the activities of a nation that seeks to develop a nuclear weapons capability.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, thank you for being here. Tomorrow, I'm going to have you in the Appropriations Committee, and we'll walk the list that we talked about a couple of weeks ago on a conference call, so I won't cover that. I want you to sort of answer the China watchers who saw that visit to China and saw that NVIDIA is now going to sell H200s. I understand that's not our highest technology, but it's better than what China has, and that's why people are worried. And that, I mean, it's pretty plain that the president violated one of the 6 assurances. I understand that the ambassador and you and others have sort of followed up to kind of smooth the edges, but I mean, it's pretty clear He says, we discussed arms sales in great detail. It depends on China. It's a very good negotiating chip for us. So what do you say to China watchers who say they got some pretty good deliverables and we didn't get much?
I don't see the trip. There were some deliverables, you know, the purchase of additional Boeing aircraft, which of course is beneficial to the Chinese as well, but helps our company, some of the agricultural concessions. But the relationship that are longstanding and that
Okay. If you guys want to know why President Trump went to China, go watch my video. It's in one of my playlists. It's called like not appeasement or something. Like President Trump's trip to China was not about appeasement. These Democrats are just very
you can imagine
low IQ.
the Chinese are against it. Everyone is. Hasn't come up for a vote yet.
It's not just predictable. It was predicted. This was what everybody said. You don't have to be some expert in foreign policy. You don't need to get into a skiff. You could literally put this into an LLM and say, what'll happen if we take kinetic action against Iran? And the first thing that would pop out is, well, they'll probably close the Strait of Hormuz. So it's really shocking to me the degree to which this administration expresses.
It's absolutely wild to me. It is wild to me that the Democrats are blaming the actions of a terrorist failed state on President Trump, right? It's like so the Islamic regime is engaging in terrorism in the Middle East, but that's somehow the fault of President Trump, right? Like it's wild. It's wild to me.
Shocked that the thing that everybody said was going to happen ended up happening.
But here's the point I would make on that, in that the reverse of that is, so the alternative is to say, well, then we have to go ahead and let Iran develop a nuclear weapon or they'll close the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, at some point you have to take action on this situation, understanding there'll be a reaction.
And keep in mind, if you allow the Islamic regime to develop a nuclear weapon in order to keep the Strait of Hormuz opened, what do you think is going to happen when the Islamic regime acquires nuclear technology? They're going to immediately shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and then oil prices are going to go up to like 300 a barrel, because then they're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz and no one will be able to touch them because they're going to have the nuclear bombs to back it up. Like these Democrats are such short-sighted.
To it, but it cannot be. Iran will always have the ability to threaten the straits. You don't need much sophistication to. If you threaten commercial vessels and shooting them, they're going to stop moving. Dropping mines. By the way, it's not just Iran that can do it. The Houthis could do it in the Red Sea, and they're not nearly as large as Iran is. I think this is a more fundamental challenge, and that is: are we now forever limited doing it? Do we just have to let Iran go ahead and develop a nuclear weapon because of their threat to close the Straits of Hormuz? That's an untenable situation.
I agree.
But I'll see him tomorrow, so don't worry. You didn't.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Tomorrow's approach.
I know we're supposed to have a hard stop at 12:30, but
no, we'll do it.
Senator Cruz has been.
This is a good one.
I hope you'll give us
only because it's him.
One more bite at the apple.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This
I will say, Mr. Secretary, since you left the Senate, I've been obliged to serve Cuban coffee in my meetings because you left me as the only Cuban American left behind. So come by if you want a cafecito. Let me start by saying that President Trump's decision to strike Iran was the most consequential decision of his second term as president. And I want to commend you, I want to commend the president and the entire administration on the extraordinary success we have seen. In less than 40 days, the United States has utterly and completely destroyed the military and nuclear infrastructure that the Iranian regime spent nearly 50 years building. Every day that passes increases American leverage. Iran is weaker, poorer, and more isolated than it's been in decades. The president has laid out 4 red lines for any resolution to this military conflict. Number 1, that there be zero enrichment by Iran. Number 2, that they hand over all of their enriched uranium. Number 3, that they stop funding terrorism worldwide. And number 4, that they open the Strait of Hormuz. I agree with all 4 of those red lines. Do you agree with those red lines?
Funding
And
proxy terrorist groups, but that's
how achievable do you believe they are in the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, you stated the poor positions the president has taken accurately, and the entire administration is supportive of it because that's what we take our directives from the president. And personally, during my time in the Senate, these would be consistent with my thinking. I would only reverse it in the following order. The Straits of Hormuz, it would have to come first because what they're doing there is unlawful and illegal to begin with. That has to open immediately. And that has to open immediately in exchange, not for anything else other than us lifting the blockade. We have a blockade on Iranian oil leaving. And the reason why we have a blockade on Iranian oil leaving is because they closed the straits. If they open the straits, and by open the straits, understand what we're saying. It's saying you're not going to threaten to shoot at commercial vessels of civilians and create, ecological disaster. That's what they're doing. It's unlawful. It's illegal. It's outrageous. Every country in the world condemns it. If they end that, we lift the blockade. Then we enter into the second phase, which is the nuclear question. On enrichment, they don't need to enrich. If what they want is a nuclear energy program, they can have one without enrichment. And it was somebody the other day, a few questions ago, I forgot who it was, said that what we're working on is similar to JCPOA. It is not. JCPOA would have expired this year. And it allowed them to keep all the enrichment equipment that they needed. And clearly that equipment could get them to 60 and 90% because they've done it to 60%. As a result of it. So it would have to deal with that question. And it would have to deal with the highly enriched uranium that they currently are in possession of. There's no reason to have, the only reason to have 60% enriched uranium is to turn it into 90% enriched uranium and put it into a weapon. So those remain, and on the sponsor of terrorism, absolutely. To the point where I would argue, for example, it's one of the interesting things that's happening, and I know Senator Shaheen has a great interest in Lebanon. It's one of the most ironic situations in the world. The Lebanese government and the Israeli government could do a peace deal tomorrow. Israel has no territorial claims in Lebanon. And Hezbollah is in particular, in fact, Hezbollah has called for the overthrow of the current Lebanese government. The impediment in Lebanon is the fact that Hezbollah has embedded itself into that country and is the reason for all the suffering that's happening there right now and all the suffering that's historically happened.
And keep in mind, guys, Hezbollah is 100% funded by the Islamic regime. That's why the Islamic regime is saying that, as part of the conditions for them to, accept whatever ceasefire or deal or whatever, Israel needs to stop attacking Hezbollah. Why? Because the Islamic regime needs Hezbollah to survive, right? The fact that Israel has severely weakened Hezbollah, that makes it even more precarious for the Islamic regime. Hezbollah is occupying Lebanon the same way that the Islamic regime is occupying Iran. In fact, one of the ways that, one of the most, important and I guess successful ways that the Islamic regime has suppressed the Iranian people from rising up to overthrow them is whenever things get heated, the Islamic regime will bring in their proxy forces, especially Hezbollah, right? That's why the Islamic regime wants Hezbollah to stick around. And Marco Rubio knows that.
Entirely funded, entirely controlled by Iran.
Oh my God,
there
I
is
just
no
said
Hezbollah
that!
without Iran.
Guys, I literally just said that, right? See? Everything that I have been telling you about Hezbollah, Iran, the Islamic regime, all of it for the last, I don't know, however many years. Literally, all of it is true. And Senator Marco Rubio just agrees with me. He literally just said it's all funded by the Islamic regime.
Great interest in Lebanon. It's one of the most ironic situations in the world. The Lebanese government and the Israeli government could do a peace deal tomorrow. Israel has no territorial claims in Lebanon. And Hezbollah is in particular, in fact, Hezbollah has called for the overthrow of the current Lebanese government. The impediment in Lebanon is the fact that Hezbollah has embedded itself into that country and is the reason for all the suffering that's happening there right now and all the suffering that's historically happened. Entirely funded, entirely controlled by Iran. There is no Hezbollah without Iran. There is no Hezbollah without Iran. I mean, there might be a political movement with ideology, but they don't have a bunch of rockets. They don't have a bunch of weapons without Iran. They are a complete, total proxy of Iran. And that's the kind of activity that needs to be.
I want to come back to Hezbollah in a moment, just focusing for a second on Iran itself. For some time, I have urged the administration, I've urged Israel to arm the protesters in Iran. I don't think it is fair to expect the Iranian people to stand up, protesters to stand up with rocks against soldiers with machine guns. Are we arming the protesters, and should we be?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any program to arm civilians in Iran to overthrow their government. I mean, there may be other countries doing it or other elements doing it, but certainly not the U.S. government.
All right, let's go back to Hezbollah. So you spoke with the Lebanese president, Joseph Aoun, over the weekend.
Very interesting. He's not aware of any programs arming civilians. Very interesting. But he leaves the door open, right? He leaves the door open.
The State Department sent out an email to journalists shortly after your call in which the State Department spokesperson said, quote, Iran wants to prolong the conflict in Lebanon so it can claim credit for saving the day. I have to admit that didn't strike me as accurate. I don't think Iran wants to keep the conflict going in Lebanon. I think they desperately want Israel to stop killing Hezbollah. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the point I was trying to make is that we are trying to view the Lebanon-Israeli talks as separate and distinct from Iran. And what Iran wants to do is mix it all together. Because Hezbollah is not legitimate. There's a government in Lebanon. That's who we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And Hezbollah is not their equal in terms of who we're going to be dealing with or who needs to be in charge. So the point we're trying to make is that is what Iran is trying to stymie. They are trying to stymie any effort in which Israel and Lebanon can work together and prolong it so that if an arrangement is reached at some point in the future, they can claim credit for having forced it through leverage. And that's why you see, for example, Hezbollah agreed to a ceasefire about a week ago and then immediately violated within hours.
You would agree every Hezbollah terrorist that the IDF kills makes America safer?
Well, Hezbollah is a danger to the United States. There's no doubt about it. I think the question is, how do you do that? And how do you achieve the objective of demilitarizing and defanging Hezbollah while at the same time strengthening the legitimate government of Lebanon, and particularly the president and others? That's been the challenge there for a very long time. That remains the challenge now, of course. The capabilities of the LAF are not where they need to be. But there are also elements within the LAF that are not who they need to be because they facilitate in some cases and cooperate with Hezbollah. So it's a very tricky situation. But I point you back to two things that have happened in the last few months. Number one, the Lebanese government expelled the Iranian ambassador because of Hezbollah. The Iranian ambassador says, I'm not leaving and you can't make me. Okay, that's number one. The second thing that's happened is just a week ago, Hezbollah openly called, they openly called for the overthrow of the Lebanese government. So no one here should be under any, Hezbollah is not just an enemy of Israel and an enemy of America. Hezbollah is an enemy of Lebanon and of the Lebanese people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Rubio, you've been very generous with your time. We appreciate it.
Okay, so that is a wrap. We're running a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to go through the super chats very quickly, and then we're going to call it a night. Guys, don't forget after this, my sister is doing a live stream documentary about space. So for people who are interested in taking a class field trip with me over to her channel, the link to her channel is it's posted. But like here, let me include the link here again for all of you on all of the streams. So if you're interested in watching a documentary about space, that's where I'm going next. So let me just add that there as well. But guys, just remember that is a class field trip. So don't go there and ask me questions about Iran, because I'm not going to answer questions about Iran on her channel. Her channel is a space channel. So if you're not interested in space, don't join us. The school field trip is optional. It's not mandatory. But I'm very interested in this stuff. So, okay, let's go to, it's also about my childhood fear. Like, she literally picked a documentary about my childhood fear. So there you go. All right, let's go to some of your super chats. And then, let's get like a nice picture of Mark. There we go. Carla says, Goldie Van Holen misses sipping margaritas with Maryland man. Yeah, absolutely. Forewarning new member. Welcome to Goldie's gang. Cat Not says, regarding Bab el-Mandab, IRGC has repeatedly threatened the Houthis will strike Israel and close Bab el-Mandab, yet the Houthis haven't and been quiet. Because Saudi Arabia pays all government salaries $4 billion a year. Every paycheck is from MBS, won't jeopardize that. Well, I mean, the Houthis are separate from the Yemenis government. But I do have a feeling that Saudi Arabia is doing something behind the scenes. I think the Houthis also are seeing the writing on the wall, which is probably why they haven't gone involved yet. Although I do know that the IRGC, through their Quds force, they're trying to like mobilize the Houthis. They just haven't really been successful as of yet. I mean, the Houthis are basically like the lowest IQ people, like terrorist group in the Middle East, right? So they're basically like a rabid dog that you just can't control. Mark Dennis says, I see multiple people in chat saying IRGC expanding attacks. It sounds big. Mamnoon, Goldie, Gamari, Aziz. Thank you. Yes, so I did bring up that post from CENTCOM. CENTCOM pretty much confirmed everything that is going on and provided an update saying that American military had intercepted everything and there were no reported casualties. Hop3Y Edit says, Goldie, huge stuff happening right now. Yes, I know. Check Tusi, IRGC bombing Kuwait, Saudi, US about to start. I mean, I will keep an eye on that. I don't know if the United States is going and Saudi Arabia are about to start. But guys, so this live stream was specifically about Marco Rubio's Senate committee hearing and my political analysis and commentary on it. And I just wanted to like keep it all in one video. But I did give some updates. And guys, I really do appreciate that you guys give me the updates and the breaking news. So anyways, I'm going to end the live stream here. And I will see you all, or those of you who want to take a optional field trip. Those who want to take an optional field trip, I will see you guys here. Let me just pull it up so you guys can see what we're doing and watching soon. So, for those of you who are interested in taking, learning about space, and you might want to take a little bit of a break from geopolitics, I'll see you guys here. And we're going to watch a documentary about my childhood fear, which is called The Dying Sun. And like I said, my sister is a smart one in the family. She's the aerospace engineer. All right, guys, have a great evening. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's evening live stream of The Goldie Show. And if I don't see you later, I'll see all of you guys tomorrow. I'm Yisrael Chai. God bless America. Payanda Iran and Javid Shah.